You're now recording.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, Judy, sorry, I had to restart.
No,
there.
it's all right. It's
Do
fine.
we have everybody here?
We have enough. We don't have everybody, but we have.
No.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
okay, so I'll call the meeting to order, please. Judy, please do the roll call.
Neil Butnick,
Here.
Judy Neville, Tom Schulte, is he on? No. Amy Carroll. You're
Amy's
here.
on.
Yeah, George Blauvelt,
Here.
Todd Lavieri,
Here.
Chris Labrie,
Here.
Michael Chin,
Here.
Maria Weingarten.
Thanks. Thanks.
Is she on? Oh,
I don't see her.
I don't either. All
Yeah, I got
right,
a note from Maria. She had a conflict.
okay. And Robert Hamill,
Here.
Victor Alvarez.
Here.
And our first selectman, Kevin Monahan. So we have to seat for Tom Schulte, and Maria's not here, so it would be Robert Hamill.
No,
So we'll see the motion.
Tom was just in my meeting, so I'm sure he's. Oh, it
There
says
he is. There he is. Tom's here.
You just
Oh,
joined.
good. All right, great. Then all present except for Maria, and she doesn't have to be replaced. Yeah.
All right, Bob, you had a brush with fame there, Bob, for 30 seconds and then.
Close, but no cigar.
Okay, thanks. All right. Okay, so a motion, please, to approve the minutes from the April 13th meeting.
Move.
Motion for Neil, second.
Second.
Second from Tom. Thank you. All in favor, raise your hands or say aye.
I,
Opposed? None. Okay, so moved. Okay, so do we have Lisa on?
We do.
Okay, I don't see her.
Here.
Yep, there she is.
And I
Lisa,
think
hi. So
I see her.
Lisa,
Bob is here
thank
as
you.
well.
you can hear me okay?
I can do. I was just checking
Thank-
to see if Bob Butman was here as well.
Is it?
Yes.
it's connected?
yeah, he's here.
Don't worry about it.
Lisa, thanks for joining, and Bob, thanks for joining. I asked you to join us tonight for a couple of reasons. One, I want to just get an update on the discussions that have been happening and where are we on the MOU, on planning and zoning, and of course, where you are on the budget. And had been a while since we'd had a chance to catch up. I know you've been extremely busy, but you've got a very supportive board here, and we're anxious to hear the latest of where we are on this really, really important project.
That's terrific, and thank you. If it's all right with you, I'll suggest a format, and if it doesn't suit you, we can change it. But I've got a quick presentation to just sort of update you on sort of the process. Then Bob has some summary information on all sorts of financials to share with you.
Okay.
And then I thought we could do some questions and answers.
Sure. That
I
works.
put the presentation together based on the questions you shot me last week, so
Okay.
hopefully I'm covering everything you wanted to know, but we can do some questions afterwards to supplement any of that.
Okay, sounds good.
Tucker, may I share my screen?
Didn't. We didn't. Okay, well, mom never gave me.
Tucker,
my
we may need
email.
to have some people go on mute. I'm
It
getting
won't let
some
me in.
feedback. We can see it.
Okay, terrific. Right, so thank you so much, Todd, and the rest of the Board of Finance for inviting us here tonight. We are really excited to be back in front of you. As you know, we have come a long way in the last year. And so I'm just going to start with a quick summary of how we got here. And then we're going to talk about some of the things you asked about, and then into the finances, and then whatever else you'd like to talk about. So just so you know what we're looking at here, this is an artist's image of the new library and Green, taken from the point of view of the intersection of Cherry and Main Street. So just going back in time a little bit to make sure everybody's up to speed and has the same basic understanding of how we got here. Early on, there was some work done as part of a whole downtown master plan, looking at where not only the library, but also town hall, Board of Ed, and other buildings might go. And there was a big townwide project looking at all of that. The upshot was that the library, the decision was made to keep the library right where it was. But to try to acquire the land around it in order to facilitate building a new library eventually. So during those years, up until 2013, several properties were acquired all around the perimeter of the library. In 2012, the library brought on Centerbrook. They held extensive focus groups and workshops and undertook an iterative design process through that time, looking at all the different needs and wants that the community had expressed for a new library and iteratively designing them through these workshops with the community. In 2013, my predecessor moved on and I was recruited. And then in 2014, one of the first things we did after I arrived was to do a feasibility study on capital raising to really understand, before we moved any further forward, what really was our ability to raise capital. That then, along with acquiring the final property, gave us the ability to go back to Centerbrook in February of 17 and say, based on everything you learned before, and now with a clear footprint and with some guidance on what we can afford, what we think we can raise, could you please go back to the drawing board and come up with a plan? So I noticed when I was going through my diary and seeing exactly when some things happened to be able to share with you tonight, it was 4 years ago this very day that I met with quite a number of people from various bodies in town and first showed this plan that we now see behind me. I thought it was somehow significant that it was 4 years ago tonight that we did that. And we wanted some input, and we wanted to make sure that before we spent any more time and money, that we had shared this with a lot of people through the town body.
Oh, did we lose her?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Lisa?
We lost you.
We lost you for a minute. You're now stop sharing again.
okay.
Sorry.
Right. So 4 years ago today, we shared the drawings that we've now developed to fully developed, almost ready for a guaranteed max price contract with a lot of people in town government. And we got their input, and we got a nod that said, yep, that looks like the design that we should be pursuing. So after that, we knew we were onto something that we could pursue, and we had formed our capital campaign. We continued recruiting members of the capital campaign and continuing to recruit for the board. We started working with doing some brainstorming, producing collateral, and planning for what it was going to be a monumental undertaking to raise really what will be in the end $26 million. And then we got on to fundraising. We started with our board. We felt very clear that it was important that we had 100% participation from our board before we asked anyone else to participate. Once we had achieved 100% of our board members, we talked to others that were very close to us, former board members and other volunteers. And we had our initial conversations with leadership at town and said, we have had conversations over the years about the possibility of town making a contribution to this plan. And we would like to discuss it with you. And we got the very clear message that we were to take this plan and go out and get 50% investment. And so that's what we did. We said, okay, fine, we'll do that. And we went away and we spent the next 18 months, really about 16 months, talking to about 1,000 people from New Canaan. And we raised $16 million. We did exactly what we were asked to do, which was to get 50% of what we then thought was going to be the project cost. As you know, you all invited us on January 14th of last year to come and share the project. We had made it known at Town Hall that we had raised 50% of the money as instructed. We had got that level of investment, and we were delighted to go in front of all of you and a couple of hundred other people and share the plans publicly for the first time. Following on the heels of that, the town council met and invited us. There was the proposal by Tom Butterworth at town council that explored the idea of conditioning any possible funding from the town on the retention of the original building. And obviously the timing for that was perfect. Had that needed to happen, that was the time to do it. That wasn't in the plan. And it was clear that that was not necessary for us to move forward. COVID happened. We then were introduced to the idea of an MOU, and we had some conversations about what an MOU would look like. And then early last summer, we had really clear guidance from you, which was really helpful to say, look, we're interested. We like this plan. We think you guys have done a great job, but you need to go away and you need to get your finances in order and be able to show us your projections on income and expenses. You need to get this MOU sorted with the selectmen and the town council, and you need to have a plan that is approved by the P&Z. So we said, right, good. We know what we need to do, and we set to it. So on June 1st, we signed a $4 million contract with Centerbrook. That was the first step in order to get these plans ready so that we could take them to P&Z. And we really worked at full tilt from last June until the end of February, getting these plans ready. Teams of architects, engineers, landscape architects, all sorts of people have been involved. Acousticians, IT engineering, all sorts of people have been working round the clock to get this done. And so we submitted our application at the end of February so that we could be in front of P&Z in March. And that began the process through the planning and zoning, where we still are today. So I'll pause there. That's the timeline. And I can either take questions now or we can keep moving forward, and I'll share a few other things, whatever you prefer.
You know what, Lisa, my suggestion, just go ahead and go through all your materials and then we'll hold questions for when you're done.
Okay. So one of the things you wanted to, that you asked us to talk about was some of what we've been talking about at the planning and zoning. And what you see in front of you now on the screen is the first half, because I couldn't fit it all on one page in a way you could see, the first half of a spreadsheet. And this is looking at the estimates that have been done on the New Canaan Preservation Alliance's proposal for a different plan to the one that we actually submitted. And we were asked to comment on this at P&Z and also here. So you can see on the far left column are the estimates that have been done by Turner Construction, who is actually the construction company that we will be using for our project. And if I go to the next slide, you can see quite a lot of the discrepancies between the different estimates. And you see on the bottom lower right, the estimate by Turner for what it would take to retain the original building where it is on the site. There is a lot more to this story than this spreadsheet, but this is just the piece that I think has been talked about quite a lot and that I thought you might be wanting to see here. But there's plenty more we can talk about this if you want to.
Lisa, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Sure.
What does it mean, the rebuild the 1913 building? I mean, how many square feet? We have two planes that are the initial stone buildings. Does that mean putting like making a rectangle and putting stone up on the other sides? I'm just curious what that means.
Yeah. Since it's not our plan, Amy, I'm not entirely sure what everyone else is talking about. Paul Stone, I think, is on the call with us tonight. He can talk about some assumptions that were made on the Turner estimates. But as for the architectural preservation and Simpson plan, we don't really know what they're thinking about there. We haven't seen any actual plans. We've just seen some concept drawings. So I don't know the answer to that. But Paul can probably speak to some of the assumptions made for the other couple of walls in the Turner estimate. As you know, what is extant of the original building is the front wall is fully intact, facing Main Street. That's about 65 feet long. And then there's a 20 feet deep going along parallel to Cherry Street on the north end. And then the Preservation Alliance plan would also include the addition that was made in 1936, which is currently the library gallery. So they would add that bit on as well. And then on the other end, at the back and on the north end, all of that was subsumed in the 52 and 79 additions. So once you separate the original front from the rest of the building, you would have to decide what you wanted to do in terms of building that. But I don't know what their plan might be.
Okay, I was just asking because you came up with an estimate, so I'm assuming your estimate assumed you put a couple other sides on or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I don't want to bog down.
Yeah. Paul would know exactly what the estimates were for the Turner one.
Stop.
Right. So, Amy, essentially what this represents is from last year, the Preservation Alliance came up with their own estimate to renovate and rebuild the old sections of the building. So it's roughly 3,600 square feet. It's not really a plan, it's a concept, but just sort of given those parameters, we looked at we had Durham, who's a professional construction estimator, who's actually familiar with the existing structure. And then Turner did later, just this past April, looked at just sort of the general needs of what that rebuild would look like. So again, it's not a formal estimate because it can't be, because it's not really a design. You need to really truly design it. But knowing that you have an old building with 3,600 square feet, knowing that you'd need to bring it up to be a code compliant building that people could actually occupy, you could get a certificate of occupancy and use it for some purpose, which is yet unknown in that scenario. But you'd certainly need to make it, you'd have to have fire protection, you'd have to have modern plumbing with ADA compliancy, you need all new electrical system, and you'd need to bring it from the street into it because it would need to be standalone. So in the scenario that the Preservation Alliance and Simpson plan contemplated, it would be detached from the new building that the library is proposing, we have on the table. And so in order to get that to be its own standalone, you have to bring in all these new systems, and there's cost embedded into that. And you can't just use what's there. You'd need to take out all the finishes to do all those things that I just mentioned. So it's
And would you have to build a couple sides of it? Because
you would. You have to rebuild. There's some existing portions there. Many are missing, and there are lots of holes punched through over the years when different additions, Amy, have been cobbled on just over the years, and you'd need to bring it up to code compliance. It's also just chock full of asbestos and lead, and in taking off the finishes to get all those mechanicals and electrical and everything you'd need, you trigger abatement to make that happen. And it's all over the building, behind the walls, throughout. So we had done some selective testing behind the walls and floors and ceilings and all of that. And it's all there, and it would have to be done in a proper fashion. and that would require taking off all those finishes. So they'd all have to go back after you put in all those brand new systems. And all that carries cost. So, and looking, at what Durham, the professional construction estimator, does, that's all he does all day long. And Turner Construction, who's a very experienced construction manager in both new and old and renovation. They've done a bunch of universities in Connecticut, smaller, medium, and larger projects. So they're very knowledgeable. And in looking at it, it became very clear that the preservation studios numbers just missing some key components. So it became clear that it was insufficient. So we know there's some
I
costs.
I didn't mean to bog this down. I just was trying to figure out how many square feet we're talking about and generally what the
3,600.
parameters are. So
Amy,
I
it's
okay.
3,600 square feet.
And we would need to build 2 new walls, yes. So, okay, so any other questions on this? All right, the other thing that I know people have been interested in is the energy consumption of the new library. This is a chart that comes from the people at Kohler Ronan, who are doing a lot of the modeling on the energy use in the new building. And as you can see, the sort of pinkish color, second from the left, is the energy usage of our library. This is based on financial year 1920. That was our actual energy consumption, electricity and heating fuel. And then you see the projections that were made when we got to the 50% of construction documents point of the development of the plans. And then you can see that the fully developed library with solar panels on the roof would get us down to that furthest on the right number. So we are reducing our total energy consumption in this building down to about a third, a little bit less than a third of what it would be, what it is today. The other thing I have, and it's unwieldy to show on the screen, but I know the other thing that's been of interest are my projections for the library's income and expenditures over the next couple of years, next 5 years or so. So I'll just flip through a couple of more slides here, and then I can shift and show you that spreadsheet. So these are just the very latest, more fully fleshed out images of the interiors of the library. That this is the mezzanine level where the adult fiction collections and adult reading room will be. An image of the new auditorium, the children's room, the tween area, the teen library, the teaching kitchen, catering kitchen, the view from the corner of Maple and South Avenue, and the view looking across Maple Street at the front of the library.
Lisa, excuse me, it's Todd. Back on the estimate, it was the $2.3 million. Did that include the lead abatement and all the ADA compliance and everything?
Paul, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. It actually did not, because there's actually not a true, we think at this point that there's not an additional cost in one scenario or another. So I didn't want to burden it with that, because in speaking with Turner, their thinking was the same as mine, is perhaps, there would be additional costs to do selective demo. And there would be selective demo that is additional, but it wouldn't be related to the abatement. So it would all be related to separating the other parts of the building that would come off it with the old building, but the abatement itself is not carried in it. That would be above and beyond.
Well, maybe I'll ask the question a little differently. In one scenario, I think maybe the original scenario, there was demo and remove. The original, right?
Right.
Okay.
Well, it's the only scenario, just to be clear. It's the only one that we put forward is demo.
No, I understand. I understand. So that cost something to do the demo and the removal of all of that. What was that in the original proposal?
Well, it's a mix of things, right? And it wasn't in that analysis. So, and it wasn't relevant to this conversation, but we could delve into that. But that's a separate.
No, I think it's relevant. Maybe, but
I think, I mean, the challenge is that we've got an estimate to demolish and remove the entire building.
right.
And we don't have, we did not, when we were doing our work, we didn't ask the engineers to contemplate leaving one part of the building standing.
No, I understand. So let me just bear with me. The original plan had a demo and remove. That cost something. What was that cost? That was in the original plan, or as you said, is the plan. What was that roughly?
For the entire library building.
Yeah, that was the plan, right? That was the base case, call it the base case.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, we do know that. I think it's, well, I don't know how refined it is. Paul, is it?
I'm looking now, but as Lisa mentioned, we don't have it broken out as to the scenario that we were.
We only have the full,
Correct. So,
entire thing.
yeah.
But if I remember correctly, given the levels of asbestos throughout the entire building, it's something over 300,000.
Right.
Yeah,
I remembered it in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it's definitely, yes.
Okay, so it was in the hundreds of thousands was sort of the base case to demolish and remove. So then everything else is from there, whether we retain 2 walls or retain whatever those other scenarios may be. It's obvious. I think we're saying it's adding, in this case, at least 2 million on top of the 300 to get to the 2.3 plus the abatement and whatever other costs you might have. Okay. Okay. And
so now that I understand your question, that would be right. So everything we're talking about is additional too, because the first thing you have is the selective demolition that would be required to leave something standing is men with chisels compared to big machinery, right?
Of course,
so huge labor costs. And then you've got the engineering, because the southwest corner particularly, there's nothing holding the roof up once you take away the other building. So you've got structural engineering work just to hold it all together until you do whatever it is you're going to do with it next. Then you would have the full abatement process of whatever you left there, as Paul explained, with all the finishes and putting in the heating and cooling and plumbing and fire suppression and all those other things. You would then be doing the abatement separately on that one.
Okay.
Right, and they're layers of engineering too, just on even the structural. There's the engineering to hold it up just so you can demolish it. And there's even a sub one of that, which is to hold it up after you've done that. And then there's a whole other exercise for the scenario of keeping it in place and rebuilding it. That's a completely different exercise. And then all of the other engineering that would go with it, the electrical, the mechanical, the fire protection, so forth.
I see you.
So
Is there a bit?
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
Okay. Yeah, is there a big swing in the expense in
Who's down?
rebuilding, depending on what surface you do to rebuild it? Because it's a stone that is I think very appealing to people. So if you would try to replicate stone on the 2 walls, you have to do, would that be like it's much more expensive than doing some other medium?
You cut
like
out
if you're
part.
trying to make it a stone library. I'm sorry.
I think my understanding is, and I can't speak for the preservationists, but their understanding would be to just keep the building as it is. But of course, for those walls that are missing and would have to be reworked, my guess is, and again, I can't speak with them, my guess is they'd want to keep it just like it is. But I don't think there'd be a huge variation in the cost, Amy, about with, if you were to do it in brick or stone. I mean, there could be, it depends upon the kind of brick and the kind of stone, really, it comes down to that. I'm not sure I answered your question, but.
That's fine. Thanks.
So,
I have a
Lisa,
question. I
interrupted your, oh, go ahead, Victor. Yep.
Yeah, just one question. So so you have the current design, and then now you're contemplating keeping the 1913 facade, and that's an incremental couple $1 million. If you do keep that 1913 facade, how does the current design, are there any aspects of the current design that get diminished in value, or do you have to like take things away in order to accommodate keeping the 1913 facade?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is we are not contemplating retaining the building. That is not something that we are currently doing. We have only got the one plan. However, because this has all come up the way it has, we have been working through what it would actually mean if we were to do that. And yes, you have to go back pretty much to square one. You would need to go back. You wouldn't design a building to be sitting in relationship to another building in the way that you would be left with these two things on the same site, right? So it wouldn't be good design. So the other thing is, of course, we went out and solicited and got $16 million of investment for this plan. So one of the parts of going back to square one would be going to speak to our investors and saying, so we need to just share with you that what you invested in is no longer exactly what we're building. Would you like to hang around while we do some redesign work and figure this out? And then we'll come back to you once we've got the new design, and hopefully you'll like that and you'll want to keep your money with us. But also, by the way, we have to spend some money to do it.
Yeah, let's stay. I want this meeting to be about the budget and where we are with P&Z too, right? I don't want to, this isn't about renovation or the historical piece of this. So can we stick with, so maybe give us the update on the P&Z, and then we'd just like to get a sense as to your budget, because, you know, since we've had this conversation for 4 years, steel prices, pick a number, has quadrupled. Things are happening, and I want to make sure we understand where your current estimates are under a scenario, and appreciate that you can't pick a final number because we don't have a final plan.
Yep. Do you want to quickly see those 5-year projections on operating, or shall I skip it?
If you can do it quickly, sure, that's fine.
All right. Yep. So what you see here is just our standard operating budget. You can see there in the center of the column, 2020 audited. So consider that sort of baseline. I have put in yellow those things that I think people have been most interested in thinking about where would we see a change to our expenses. So electricity, heating, fuel, building grounds and maintenance, cleaning service, custodial supplies. Also, obviously, parking charges, which are down the bottom, which are things that we're going to pick up in the next couple of years. So going across, you can see that we're going to lose, we're going to, let's see if I can freeze this. Anyway, we're going to lose heating fuel. Our electricity is going to go down. So you'll see there that the heating fuel is going to go down to 0 in the new building. Electricity is going to go down. It's going to go down, as you just saw by the previous chart, even more than this. These were plugs that I had put in here a while back before I had that final work from the engineers, the heating and cooling engineers. One thing that's going to go up will be building grounds and maintenance, and we've had some very clear estimates on that. And then our cleaning services and cleaning custodial supplies, we have more areas for the public, and so those will indeed go up. Additionally, we have these extra costs for, this is the sewer tax that kicked in last year fully, and then the cost of parking for our rental costs at Center School Lot and St. A's. But you can see with my checks down here, we have made enough, there are changes also to our income. We've got new revenue hire, facilities hire and other revenues, lease fees up here. And we're hoping to be able to continue all of our great fundraising up here so that we can make this all work. So I have sent a number of times and can continue to send as we continue to update it. But I knew that was something you were interested in. As to the finances on the project, Bob was prepared to speak about that tonight.
Okay.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Let me start by just giving you a high-level summary of all the financials on the project, and I'll start with really the fundraising side of the equation, where we are, the project costs, the balance sheet, and the P&L, and potentially, if you want to discuss it, our loan with preliminary term sheet and loan contingency with Bankwell. But as far as the project costs are concerned, and you don't need to sharpen your pencils because we can provide you with a detailed spreadsheet down the road on this. Total project costs as we speak today are $38.5 million. Of note there is that cost has been steady now for several months. We did a value engineering, 6 months ago. We went through another level of engineering on the project, and despite escalations in raw materials and otherwise, working with Turner and working with Durham, the other project consultant, and we've kept the price steady. And of that 38.5, it's 30 million roughly for hard costs, which is the construction cost itself, and 8.5 for soft costs. So what are soft costs? They are the design, the engineering, legal, and FF&E and otherwise. So, and it's a big number in that total budget. We've moved quite smoothly through the design development into the construction documents. And hopefully as we speak, in the next several weeks or so, we'll be ready to get a GMP contract with Turner in place. So I would say we're moving on schedule, and we're quite comfortable. The most recent commitment we're going to have to make, and something we're looking at very closely, is steel. There's roughly 1.6 million of steel in this project. We had multiple bids put out in advance, with Turner going out and soliciting subcontractors. We got good bids back in. We've chosen one. We put a deposit down, and we're going to have to fund at the next level, the next step of that commitment at the end of May. So we're very, very wary of cost escalations, and we're doing our best to keep them under control. Okay, as far as our revenues are concerned, let's start with our total revenues to date. And this is the capital campaign only. If you look at the library itself is in great shape, very financially sound, $1.6 million endowment. We've met or exceeded our budget every year for the last 6 years. And our fundraising has been consistent and on target. So we're very, very comfortable with the library as it stands today. But in the capital campaign, total revenues to date are $16.85 million, of which 14.64 is actual revenue, meaning these are firm pledges that we've either banked or put into the, into our spreadsheets, and they've been accepted into the accounting system. Okay. There's another 951,000 is what we call expected additional revenues. These may have contingencies associated with it with respect to when pledges would come forth, whether there has to be a shovel in the ground, whether there has to be a signed MOU, or whether the town has to commit the $10 million. So there is some sort of contingency on that. There's another 1.258 million of what we call pending gifts, which are forthcoming here in the very near future, but have been recognized by development teams. So you look at the total, again, it's 16.84. If you look at our balance sheet today and where we stand, we have 6.5 million, a little over 6.5 million of cash on hand. We have future pledges in place of $3.405 million, so a little over $3.4 million. We have pending gifts of 2.21 million. So if you take that and add that to the town's announced commitment or expected commitment of 10 million, means that there's an additional 12 million of fundraising that's going to have to go forward from this point once we start kicking in the fundraising plan. If you look at our P&L to date, there's we spent $4.5 million already in sunk costs. So that is really everything from fiscal year 15 up to fiscal year 20, plus we've spent a little over $3.5 million this last year on all the design and legal costs. So design being primarily architectural costs and otherwise. As far as our loan is concerned with Bankwell, just, we have a preliminary term sheet, and I think we've talked about this in the past. It is a commitment up to $15 million, and it really has some contingencies associated with it. Obviously, it's only preliminary, and it will stay that way until such time as we get through P&Z. And then the second thing is the $10 million commitment from town. And once those two things happen, it will trigger a formalization of Bankwell. We have to pay a commitment fee. Then we'd have basically an IO loan for a 2-year period. Then that would go out to 5 years, roughly an interest rate at or around 4%. It's a construction loan, and then we'd have an option to extend it for another 5 years beyond that. So that's kind of the high level of the balance sheet, the P&L. Then we could talk a little bit, if you want, about, the cash flows, because this is, critical, and obviously it's going to depend on when the town funds and how quickly the project gets going. But if you look at it right now, we're hoping to have a shovel in the ground, let's say sometime in June, late June, July. So that means that, we're going to start spending in earnest on the hard dollar costs of this project. So right now, with our $6.5 million of cash on hand, plus, and I'm estimating here a commitment from the town arriving in September, let's say, of 10 million, that would give us basically $16.5 million to spend before we have to start thinking about drawing down anything on a bank loan. But that also excludes anything that we get in fundraising this year, which is another $1 million plus of expectation. So let's give or take $17 million that we will go through before we start drawing down. And I would anticipate that when this project really gets rolling, we're going to be spending anywhere from $1.5 million up to $2 million a month. And the maximum, we'd probably have to start drawing down in the spring of 2022. The max drawdown might be in the spring of 2023, and by the latest cash flow estimates, it could be roughly $8 million would be the maximum drawdown. Again, we have a commitment from the bank for up to 15. And we expect a completion of the project around the spring of 2023. So think about that in terms of 18 months going forward from when we put the shovel in the ground, anywhere from 18 to 24 months. We have a fundraising model that we've worked on, which is different than the cash flow model. The fundraising model is, we probably just have enumerated a number of times, really has to raise an additional $12 million. But if you look at our track record, when we raised the first 16 million, we were doing about $1 million a month, and we did it over a year and a half. So our plan is to raise $12 million over a 4-year time horizon. And that would start at the end of this fiscal year, really this fiscal year, 2021, and go for 4 years, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And, some of the pledges will come in as 1-year gifts. Others will come in as multi-year gifts. The focus will be on three-year gifts, primarily, but there'll also be 5-year gifts. So in our fundraising model, we have that all spaced out so we can look at the cash flows coming in over the time horizons. And that leads us to where we think the maximum drawdowns would be and when we'd be pulling in the Bankwell loan. That's primarily it. I could open it up for questions, but I mean, I think you can
That's
rest
good.
assured that we've given deep thought to
No, that's
the
good.
financials here.
That's a great summary. And the 38.5 anticipates or includes what on preservation at this point? I am assuming nothing of the 2.3 or the 3 million, whatever it might be.
No, the 38.5 million is really for the project as designed.
That's right. I just want to be clear. Just want to be clear. That would
There's
be
nothing in there for
Okay.
preserving anything.
Okay.
I mean, we are obviously, as part of that project, thinking about repurposing certain aspects of the 1913 building. So
Yeah.
that
Okay.
would be included in the total project cost.
Now, can we talk about, we're running out of time. I know you've got to get to your 8 o'clock meeting. Where are we on the P and Z? What's the latest?
Lisa, do you want to address that?
Sure. Yeah, so we've had 3 public hearings so far. As a consequence of the most recent public hearing, the commissioners asked for a study to be done. We've sent the check up the street to you all today, I think, or it's been being done today, to pay for a consultant to come in. Essentially, it's a bit broader than this, but to review that slide I shared with you, the spreadsheet showing the different analyses of what it might cost to rebuild the original structure, based on the sketches done by the Preservation Alliance. The remit is a bit broader than that, but that was one of the things that it's intending to do.
Okay, but what about parking and traffic?
Those are all sorted. I mean, parking was
All right.
sorted. We went to the parking commissioners in January, then we went to the Board of Selectmen, and then the town council, it was folded into the MOU and the town council voted on it. So the parking is solved.
Okay.
We are hoping to be back in front of the police commission in the next couple of weeks. They need to approve the crosswalk from the center school lot to the library. It needs to be moved about 15 feet up the street. And so we are working with the engineers and DPW to make sure that we're designing a crosswalk that is, what they would like.
Sure.
We
Okay.
obviously want to work well with town on this.
All right, good. Any questions from the board? And maybe ask just Chris Labrie and Neil, who have done a lot of the heavy lifting for this board on this project. Any input, other questions, or anything else that you want us to cover tonight? Chris or Neil?
Yeah, I was pretty, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead.
I was pretty happy with the summary. I think they covered the main points. The point is preservation costs money, and it's a hunk of money. And I'm just doing my analytical job and wondering, how do we close that gap? And so that's something we just have to think about. We still need the GMP and the budget and all those numbers to make a final decision. But in the end, can you throw $3 million on the GMP price for preservation? That's what I think our question is going to be. But I'm very happy with the presentation.
Okay.
Chris, you might have a comment too.
Well, I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think the presentation was good. It certainly covers the state of play currently. The bank information, the bank loan, I think is something we probably need to look at a little more closely to see what the rights that the bank has reserved for itself, how the interest works, that sort of thing. So far, I think all the library has is a term sheet. So you don't have a loan agreement. So it's kind of hard to see what some of these details will be. But I think at some point, maybe through the building committee, where Neil and I participate, we can start digging into some of those details.
Bob,
Lisa, could I? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, could I ask, and I know this has been on hold for a while, the discussions in the preliminary term sheets with Bankwell, I mean, I think those were quite a while back. Have any additional discussions happened since we've had such a major decline in interest rates in terms of what terms they might offer you all? As opposed to, I mean, 4% is a pretty high rate these days.
is yes. There's been an ongoing discussion with Bankwell. I meet with their chief commercial loan officer every month now to give him an update on where we stand. It's a bit of a chicken and egg, as you can understand, because in order for them really to make a firm commitment, get to a contract, they have to have two things in place. Again, we have to have approval from P&Z. We have to have the 10 million from the town. And as far as interest rates are concerned, the terms have been held steady over the course of our dialogue. The one thing, interest rates have come down, but unfortunately, in these types of loans, there's a floor. So effectively, we're off a variable rate, but that variable rate is less than 4%, but there's a 4% floor. So, we're negotiating on that, and I'm comfortable that when we are ready to sign the final contract and put down the commitment fees, that, we'll get the best competitive rate that we can get from the bank.
Okay.
Okay, look, great summary. I appreciate that. Bob, if you could send us all that spreadsheet that you walked through with the revenues, with the firm commitments, the balance sheet, you had the cash on hand and so forth, the budget of 38.5, that would be great. Any other questions from the board at this point? Anybody? No? Tucker, anything else? I can't see everybody if anyone's raising their hand. Lisa and Bob, thanks so much.
Okay, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, look, you've got a supportive board that really wants to get this rolling. So let's get the final things nailed down here, particularly as it relates to next steps. And we'd like to move on getting our piece of this done sooner than later. So thanks for this, and we'll come after you. We probably have some follow-up questions just based on this conversation that we'll follow up with.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Lisa, thanks so much. Thanks, Bob. Okay.
Yep.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. That was great. Update for that. Let's move on to the first selectmen's update, please. Kevin? Kevin there?
I am.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
hi
right.
there.
Hey, Todd. Good evening, members of the Board of Finance. Good to see you all. And I will start off with, I just have a few items here. You probably all read the COVID update last night. We're doing very well on our vaccinations in New Canaan. Our percentages are among the highest in the area, and we have crossed 10,000 doses administered. And this Friday, we're going to administer 800 or 900 doses to kids 12 to 15, and next Wednesday we're going to do another 800 or 900. So there's great demand among the youth, at least the parents of the youth, to get the vaccinations done. We've stepped down testing to 2 days a week. And so I think, some people think the governor's being too aggressive with his plans for reopening, but, the fact of the matter is the numbers are all going in the right direction, not only in Connecticut, but in the neighborhood. So we ought to be looking toward opening up in June and going back to in-person meetings. We did a hybrid meeting last week with the Board of Selectmen, and we're going to look to trying to make the technology work that we continue to have town employees participate remotely. So especially for night meetings, when Tiger has to be on for a meeting, he cannot have to stay around to be in person. So that's all good news on the COVID front. We've been working on the CHP. As I told you last month, the CHP at both the highway garage and the wastewater treatment plant went live last month. And in talking to Eversource, we finally given up the ghost saying bringing gas to West School. Part of the reason we're doing CHP, besides the fact that we save money doing it, is incentivize them to bring gas to West School without a capital commitment from the town. But for Eversource, they regard, since they have to meet pure standards in terms of how much business they take on to justify the expansion, they regard West School as just a bridge too far. So instead, we're refocusing our efforts on where we're using CHP. We have a contractor in Aegis, which is the premier CHP manufacturer and installer in the Northeast. They're based in Holyoke, Mass. They were the low bidder for the highway garage and the wastewater treatment plant. They were the low bidder for the Sachs project. we have come to the conclusion that there probably is no need for a phase 2 for Saks. And therefore, we're looking at, gas will be brought to Town Hall in the next month or so, as they come up Main Street in the next month, working nights. And also bringing gas into Waveney Park to Lapham Center and the pool, which we've been working on for a while, but they're now more incentivized if we're going to put CHP at Lapham, which will not only power the, we have a $66,000 a year electric bill between Lapham Center and the lights at the water tower fields. So so we're working on that, and then we thought we would defer the high school project to next year after we get the roof on and the solar later this year. Tiger will elaborate on this more when we get to the bond resolutions, if you want to discuss that more.
Okay.
The police department building project is moving along. The two architects we've gotten some updates with them, and they're going to come back in June with their two work streams. The building committee is going to tour Darien and possibly Greenwich on Thursday. So that's all moving forward. The Playhouse project is on your agenda tonight is the roof, but we're going to bring back in June a package of upgrades into the interior of the building, which has really been deferred for years, which we need to do to reopen the Playhouse. And that will be, again, coming back in June. We're having good operator discussions, and we'll look to conclude those as we begin to scope out the true cost of the upgrades to the interior of the building. And then finally, the Ponos Ridge Public Safety and Cell Tower is moving forward. The engineering planning work is being done. Hope to have it to the siting council by the mid to end of the summer. And finally, as was mentioned earlier, the Advisory Committee on Buildings and Infrastructure, which met yesterday, we had Ian Hobbs, the chair of the Library Building Committee, present on the energy plan for the library, and we had a few follow-up questions, but that was a good presentation. And finally, I would just like to note, I think you're going to do it later yourselves, but this is George Blavat's last Board of Finance meeting, and he just had his last Advisory Committee meeting yesterday. It's been a pleasure to work with George, and I for one, want to just recognize George and thank him for all his service to the town.
Thank you. Here on that, and thanks, Kevin. Look, I before we get into the rest of the agenda, I did want to note this, and I said to Amy, I talked to Amy yesterday on a couple of items, and we talked about George's, pending retirement. I'm not really I'm in denial personally, and I said to Amy, I got to tell you, George is an amazing board member. He is unbelievable. He always raises his hands. He always volunteers. He asks the best questions. But you do it in such a nice way. You even when you're trying to get at something, you're so unbelievably gifted at asking those questions in a way that gets the answer and is very pleasant. I am going to miss you terribly, George. You're a great board member, and I just want to let you know I've really enjoyed working with you now these last few years, and I'm going to miss your counsel. And I looked into whether or not we can get a waiver for the taxes on your car, that if you paid the taxes on your car, does that still mean you can stay on a board? And I'm not getting any love from Town Hall. But in any event, George, thank you so much. Maybe others have comments too, but I just thank you so much for all your service and all that you've done, and a great member you've been.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. And Todd, the last 6 years for me has been an absolute privilege. The level of competency, expertise, and professionalism on this board and for the people who work for this town is just absolutely sky high. The town is incredibly lucky to have this kind of talent working on its behalf. So, and I remain in awe of the board's willingness to do the heavy lifting and the commitment to try and get things right. And I will miss that, and I will miss all my friends.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Well, you're not done yet.
No, I'm still working.
We got to get a mill rate, and we need your input. But thank you, George. Okay, Mike Benevento, moving on to the New Canaan Athletic Foundation update.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, everyone on the board. Thanks for having me. That's a really tough act to follow, like having all that praise, and now I'm here. just to give you a little update on the Board of Finance or what we're doing at the Athletic Foundation. So, and also thanks for whoever put me 5th on the agenda. I don't know who's in charge of the agenda, but when
You're welcome.
the
Hank
beginning of
Tucker.
the meeting and somebody said something about 10 o'clock. I go to bed around 9:30, so I wouldn't have made it. I'm here to give you guys a quick update on what we're doing at the Athletic Foundation. I thought I'd do it in 3 parts. Number 1, an update on our operations, a quick review of the memorandum of understanding that we signed with the town roughly 2.5 years ago now, and how we're following through on some of the operating items that are pledged in that MOU. Number 2, give you a quick update on the master plan that we've worked on for the last 2.5 years in terms of the next phase of what we'd like to see the Athletic Foundation get done in partnership with the town. And then number 3, an update on the capital campaign that is there to support some of the items that we've contemplated in the master plan. So it shouldn't take more than 10 minutes, definitely not. And I'm happy to answer any and all questions. We spend a lot of time and there's a lot of detail with this stuff. So I'm available here, but I'm always available, as Kevin and Tiger and others know, to answer questions. So first and foremost, the operations update. If you remember, the memorandum of understanding called for 2 things operationally that the NCAF would take care of. Number 1, we are now the body that collects the player use fees from the organizations in towns that use our facilities. So think of all the youth programs, think of some of the recreation programs like men's softball and flag football. There's a $25 tax, for lack of a better word, that now comes to the Athletic Foundation. And the Athletic Foundation, with full transparency for the constituents that pay into that fund, know that 50% of those funds go to what we refer to as an enhancements account, and 50% of those funds go into a turf replacement account. The idea when we built the new fields back in 2017 was that, and when we ran into the problem with having to rip and replace Dunning Stadium, that we never wanted to be in that position again where we didn't have money ready to replace a turf field at the end of its useful life. So we've started an endowment account that the Athletic Foundation can help contribute to that. And so what we've done is in the fall of 2019 and the fall of 2020, we've collected in the fall of 2019, yes, in the fall of 2020, we collected player use fees from all of the organizations. We obviously didn't do it in the spring of 2020 because of COVID. And just to give you a sense, those fees in 2020 were roughly, in the fall of 2020, were roughly $32,050, not even roughly, exactly. And that was for 1,282 rosters. All of these organizations submit their rosters and then we charge them the $25. In the fall of 2019, it was 1,301 players, and the total fee income was $32,513. The spring is actually, interestingly, a much heavier time, and we haven't gotten all the roster counts yet. We've sent the notifications to all the uses or to all the organizations, but my guess is we're going to be somewhere closer to $60,000 in player use fee that will come in for the spring programs, and that's including baseball, lacrosse, soccer, softball, and the men's softball league. Give you a sense, lacrosse just alone has roughly 950 players in their organization. It's a massive group that gets a ton of use out of the fields, and they're very thankful to have them. But we're thoughtful about how we collect it, and again, 50% into turf replacement, 50% into enhancements. The other part of the MOU contemplated was the operating of the enterprise zone, as we refer to it, which is basically, as we presented to you guys, to town council back when we did the field enhancements in 2017, that the Athletic Foundation would take those fields, that footprint up next to the high school, and run it as a commercial enterprise zone from June 15th to August 15th. We do it in coordination with the Fields Committee. They allocate us or approve us the the things that we're going to run on that footprint. And we have our executive director, Bobby Rushton, organizes and basically books and runs this for the summer. And to give you a sense, in 2019, a pre-COVID year, but really our first kind of crawl year, we did roughly $38,000 in gross revenues. Last year, in a COVID year, we added a girls lacrosse tournament, some youth football activities, and then had more rentals to Eclipse Lacrosse and Gold Coast Lacrosse. Last summer, we did $62,696 in gross revenues. So in a COVID year where we weren't able to, run a lot of the things that we wanted to do, we were able to do close to $63,000 in gross revenues. This coming summer, we've added another girls lacrosse day, the Grip It and Rip It football tournament, which is run over July 9th and 10th, and an Eclipse lacrosse tournament, another men's lacrosse tournament will be run. And the estimation for this summer is we'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $90,000 of gross revenue. So we're on that path of, kind of walk or crawl, walk, jog, call, walk, drop, potentially sprint at some point. One of the things that has also been turned over to the Athletic Foundation that we haven't been able to run last spring and this spring is the NCAA lacrosse tournament that comes to Dunning Stadium. The operations for that was also, as of last spring, we were planning on running that and running it as a commercial organization. So again, these are an opportunity to monetize that footprint of fields during a period in the summer when the youth and the town people aren't using them as much, and it gives us a chance to generate some revenues and turn them right back to the town in the form of, again, 50% goes of the net revenues go to turf replacement, 50% go to the enhancements account. So in my view, the business plan that we laid out, the operations of the memorandum of understanding that we entered into with the town in partnership is working as flawless as we expected, and is only going to get enhanced from here. So that's the update on that. I'm happy to answer any questions on it, but it's pretty smooth sailing, and we get better at it every year as we go along. And the best part is everybody sort of understands now. There was some confusion, the player use fee. Why am I paying this now into the Athletic Foundation? What I get a lot of great feedback on is the transparency, right? People know where they're giving their money, or where the money is coming in, and they know exactly where it's going into, two accounts that go directly back into the town and the fields that they're using. So that's helpful, and we never get any pushback on collecting any of this.
Questions?
Hey, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hi, Amy.
By the way, thanks for doing this. I mean, it's just great that you guys are doing this and, pulling in this money to help support the fields and the reserve room replacements on. It's terrific. In terms of the player use fee, are we up in, is that collected as expected across all players? Any glitches with that? If we've got glitches, is it resolved? I mean, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that it's, it's being collected and coming to you, because I think we had some problems with some of the rec run programs.
I think we had, there was maybe some confusion in the beginning. I think that confusion has been ironed out. My understanding is everybody that's on the list to send money in, including the rec programs for this spring, will be doing that. So I think there is no confusion anymore. And now, again, like I said, a couple of speed bumps as we implemented it along the way. I think everybody's crystal clear now, and we're getting all those. We haven't had anybody balk yet.
That's great. And so how much money have you been able to set aside for the field replacements? Because I know you're splitting it.
Yeah, we're splitting it. And I can tell you the other thing that we do, this is mechanical, but on a once, maybe twice a year basis, we sweep money into two accounts that we keep at the New Caney Community Foundation. So this isn't just money that's sitting in cash. This is money that will go to work as any endowment fund should. So I can give you the balances right now as of 3/31 in the turf replacement account are $75,000. In the enhancements count are $82,739. So that is money that's just been generated off of player use and net revenues off of the enterprise zone activities, and not including any money for the spring of 2021 or the summer activities of 2021.
Great. Great. Thanks so much.
Mike, can you speak a little bit to the master plan?
Yep, that was my next on my list.
All right. Okay, good.
Yep. So master plan. One of the things that we learned when we did the last project was, first of all, I got a really good lesson on how town and government planning should happen and the cadence of the way that things should happen, and promised myself and our organization promised that when we went to the next building project, we were going to be very thoughtful about number one, making sure everybody in town was in lockstep with what we were thinking about, and number two, giving ourselves enough time to properly lay this out. So we surveyed our constituents and some of the things, what they would like to see done next as part of this master plan. And the things that we've come up with are a new entranceway to Dunning, a new press box at Dunning Stadium, turf fields at the softball fields that are up at Waveney Park. And then probably the biggest one from a new facility standpoint is a varsity baseball field. And we employed Richter and Segan about 2 years ago to take a look at the footprint. And I'll say this a million times, I think that one of the things that we have the luxury of in New Canaan is a campus footprint. Some of the things that have happened at different towns, while they have great facilities, and I'll just flat out call out Darien, I think that they jammed a couple of turf fields into a parking lot. We have this incredible luxury of having a campus. And so we had Richter and Segan look at that and say, what can we do if these are the things that we're looking to try to get done? And the idea of moving the varsity baseball field up to Capo Field, which sits next to Lapham, is one of the things that's in the master plan. If you recall, a year and a half ago when we had Field Fest, we had a couple of placards that had those master plans out on display. And I would tell you, we're now in the middle of, and this is the third item on my agenda, a capital campaign in order to support that master plan. And we bring those placards and those drawings to every one of our small meetings, cocktail parties, whatever they are. And it gets a lot of traction because visually people understand what we're trying to do. So let me just take each three of those. The entranceway to Dunning, and this is the one that I think that we can definitely get done first and foremost. We envision as an organization, almost like a Mead Park setting where you'll have a new entranceway. It's a capstone to everything that we did at the Water Tower 1, 2, and 3 fields, and then an entranceway into the town's premier athletic facility. If you have it in between those two areas, kind of on the backside of the press box at Dunning Stadium, it would be a park-like setting that would have food service that would cover both the inside of Dunning and the outside. So the Water 1, 2, and 3 fields. And that we think would just be, and that's where we would put the donor wall that we've promised for our donors, and really a new park-like setting entranceway into the town's premier athletic facility. So that's first and foremost where we're getting a lot of support. Enhancements inside of Dunning, this is a little bit more complicated, but the idea of getting a new press box in there, we're going to work in partnership or in consultation with the Board of Ed. We think that can be a learning center because we have so many kids now that are involved in broadcasts and audio video stuff that are, maybe they're not athletes, but they're filming all the athletics, they're broadcasting it. And we think that can be, if we enhance that press box, that can be not only a great asset to the athletic community, but ultimately a great asset to others in the community and potentially even part of the curriculum at the high school. So that's one piece of the master plan. Turfing the softball fields is very simple. Those fields are there, the footprints are there. There's a lot of rain out issues for all of these spring sports, and I won't bore you with the amount of emails and phone calls that I get in the March and early April months. But even though we have all this turf, you'd be surprised that there's still a bottleneck in the amount of footprint that people are looking for. So turfing the softball fields in the Northeast, that's become a norm. That's something that they're looking to have done. And then finally, and this is one that I would have said was probably, a little bit further down the road, but given the groundswell of support that we've gotten from the baseball community, I think that that's ticking up on the priority list. And so the idea of building a new, turfed baseball facility stadium on your campus. I mean, one of the, I'm a baseball guy, my kids play baseball, but one of the criticisms we get from a lot of people is that the varsity baseball team in New Canaan has to take a bus to their home games.
Yeah.
So Mead Park is beautiful. It's an incredible setting. But that's the reality, is the fact that there's no facilities there for them to change. There's no facilities there for them to use the restrooms or other teams. So that's a big push from the baseball community. And I would tell you, just from some of our fundraising efforts and from our capital campaign efforts, that's a place where we're getting a real groundswell of support. So I have high level costs on all of these. I'm sort of loath to give them to you because they haven't been cost engineered just yet. We haven't put them out to bid. We've gotten a good sense from firms like RAD and FBG, who Tiger knows both of. And I think as we get closer and see where our capital campaign dollars are funneling, we'll have a better sense as to where we want to push forward. But we're very conscious, and so let me get to the third part now, and then I'm happy to open it up to questions. We're very conscious about the cadence of the town calendar and getting in front of the budget cycle, and we explain that to everybody in our capital campaign discussion. So we set out at the beginning of this year, it was going to be last year, but COVID kind of delayed us a bit. We set out at the beginning of this year and said, we put a stake in the ground that said we'd like to raise $5 million over the next 18 months. And we get a lot of people that say, well, where does that money, where are we going to see that money go? And I say, well, we have a master plan. We have a very well thought out plan. And the truth is, we'll kind of follow where the money comes in, where our constituents are seeing support, right? So I feel very good about the entrance to Dunning because I know we kind of have unrestricted funds that will go that way. Where I'm seeing a lot of support is on the baseball side. And so then again, we'll raise this money over the next 18 months, but that money may come in faster for baseball, and then baseball could end up being a priority. And this is something that, again, I'm in conversation pretty frequently with Tiger. Kevin comes to our board meetings. The one thing I don't want anybody, and the Fields Committee between Steve and Jay and John Howe, the one thing I don't want anybody to be confused about, or I don't want anybody to be surprised, right? We have these cocktail parties and these campaign committee meetings, and I'll give feedback to anybody as it comes to me, right? Because the way that I think this works well is we raise a bunch of money, and then we can actually get something done, because I know whatever we're doing in partnership with the town, and you all have been supportive both in our past projects and I think, going forward in our future projects. And I think that's the way the partnership works well, where there's no surprises along the way. So I'm energized, I'm enthusiastic. I've gotten a lot of support. I can tell you, I don't have library numbers. Those are big numbers, but we've done, 3 or 4 small campaign events so far. And I'm north of $500,000 off of
Wow.
3 campaign contributions.
Hey, Mike, we're going to need to move along. Does the board have any thank you for that. And by the way, thanks for what you're doing too. Goes without saying. Board members, any other questions for Mike at this point?
I just have one, which is, when do we think the turf field at Dunning needs to be replaced? And
Those turf fields generally they have 10-year useful lives. So it depends on the usage, but the average is about 10 years.
So we're 2 years into it. We've got 8 to go, kind of thing.
We're 3 years into it. And
yeah, but last year was kind of weird. So maybe.
That's fair. There was. Yes, I think we'll have a better sense of that, whether it's 9 or 11 years, 3 years from now.
Yeah,
but we're kind of using a 10-year mark.
And what do we think the replacement cost of the field will be?
I don't know what the cost of the commodity will be, in 7 years, but I can tell you the first time through Dunning on a rip and replace was, my recollection was $650,000.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah, great stuff. Are you planning or turfing both the girls softball field and the men's softball fields at Waveney?
Not the men's softball fields, just the girls' varsity softball fields, the fields that are down below that are lit.
Okay, just those, not the men's softball field. You leave the way it is.
Yeah, my feeling, and I think everybody here would, once you start creeping into Waveney Park with turf, I think that's going to be a no-go zone. So we keep it just the ones that are already kind of designated athletic fields. So the closest we get is Capo Field and the turf. I'm sorry, the girls softball fields, not the men's softball field.
Okay, but Capo as well.
Capo as well, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Anybody else?
Yeah, Todd, it's Tom. I just a quick point. I think, look, from my perspective, I think this is a win, and I think it can continue to be a win for the town. I just wonder, as a point for the board, how frequently it makes sense to have Michael here, because I found this to be very, very helpful. And I think it's a little unique in the sense that we've kind of delegated, revenue collecting and event planning and capital planning, and yet the folks that actually bear the sort of budget consequences are, in the field committee and the other arms of the government that come in front of us. And so maybe the timing of Mike appearing can be timed with some of those other things so we can hook it together. It sounds like it's all working quite well with Tiger and Steve and Kevin going and the fields committee and all, but it'd be good to kind of stitch that together for the board.
Yeah, my suggestion, made a note, and just Tucker as a note, but maybe, I'll leave it up to you, Mike, but I'm thinking come back in the fall, October, November, before we get into the budget, but you'll have had the spring behind you, the summer behind you, and you'll be deep enough into the fall. You'll have 3 real good seasons of more experience, and it's ahead of our budget. So what do you think, Tom? I mean, I think that time.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll have one more Field Fest under our belt on September 19th. We're going forward with our annual fundraiser this year.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Good question, Tom. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's see. Linda and Scott, I think over to you guys on housing. Item number 6.
All right. Super. Hello, everyone. So Scott Hobbs, Chairman of the Housing Authority. We're coming tonight in order to ask for funds out of the Housing Authority fund in order to help support converting over the Millport apartments to over to gas heating. The original Mill apartments, which were the actual townhouses, were not set up. We did those on a real shoestring. They were all electric heat, electric hot water, and old technology. They've surpassed their useful lifespan and had started to break down. Now with gas coming along, of course, it makes sense to go ahead and convert everything over to gas while we're doing the changeover. In addition, for the Millport apartments, which are the 4 big apartment buildings, we had contemplated that they would actually be converted to gas at some point once gas was available. And of course, thanks to Kevin and his hard efforts, gas is available a lot sooner than we thought it would be. So overall, the project's around $450,000. We've already spent around 70 or so. We have, I believe, already had about 50,000 approved in prior approvals. And now we're coming asking for essentially the balance, which I think is around the $350,000 mark now, which will allow us to complete this this changeover.
Linda, anything else to add or any questions? Because we'll need a motion.
No, I think Scott covered
go ahead.
it. There's a balance of $350. There was a $50,000 that was approved end of last year or the year before that they haven't drawn down. So that 50 plus the 300, if approved today, would give them a total appropriation of $350 to draw down upon for this project.
Okay, any questions?
So I'm sorry, Scott, do you need 300 or 350? Do you already have the 50 approved? You haven't drawn it down? I'm just trying to.
Sure. Overall, it's going to end up being about $450,000 for the full project. We did end up earning some, we got out of our financing some developer fees from Canaan Parish, which allows us to help do this, the balance of those funds. But we essentially need most of what's in the, all except for an amount to keep the account open right now. And then we may come back later on for the balance of the, to see whether or not we can pay back the housing authority for the balance that goes into it.
Okay.
So
This request is for the 300 because they've already gotten the approval of the 50.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
Okay, good.
Any other discussion, questions? George, did you have a question or you were just asking for?
No, Tucker actually anticipated my question and
Okay.
the right answer. So thank you, Tucker.
Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, I just need a motion for the approval of the request for $300,000 to come from the trust fund.
Judy?
Judy motion. Yep, George second. Okay, all in favor, say aye or raise your hands, please. Thank you. Opposed? Any? None? Okay, motion moves. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate the support, and Canaan Parish is moving along nicely. So hopefully we'll continue to get some more units back online.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Super. Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
very much. Alrighty.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Linda, over to you for a few items.
Thank you. And Tucker's gonna help share my screen.
Okay.
So really, we're looking to talk about three things. We'll have the financial update, then the fund balance drawdown discussion, and then that will lead to the mill rate, and we will have to approve both of those. So start with the financial update.
All right, hang on. He's having a problem with his screen. Nope, that's not what we wanted. Take that back. Hold on. Hold on here. I just had it there. Hang on.
You need to clean up your emails.
I know, look at that.
I'm old fashioned, you laugh at me, but he printed these things out for a reason.
Have you got it there? Do you see it?
I could see it, yep.
Yes. So I'll run quickly through this. Obviously, property tax revenues is a major driver of our revenues. And just to kind of show you, we started tracking this last year with the COVID and the executive orders with a 90-day delay, just to kind of see how taxes are trending. And so we've been tracking these on a monthly basis, year over year. And so the most recent column I have is May 1, 2020 compared to May 1, 2021, just to kind of see where things are now. Year to date, property taxes, this does include $1.5 million in sewer fees, but we have 142.2 million year to date collected compared to 142.7 the same period last year. Of that, like I mentioned, there's 1.5 million of sewer fees. You'll see that in the second tier graph below, which breaks it by payment type. So total taxes of that is 140.6 million. It's trending where we anticipate it to be. It is over the budgeted amount, as we've always talked about, with a 98.5% collection rate. So I don't anticipate any changes to our tax revenue collection rate. And therefore, we're doing very well with taxes. And then the next page, Tucker.
Yep.
Thank you. And this is the typical financial report that you get from me on a monthly basis. Just looking at the top section are the revenues. By major categories, you'll see that all revenues combined, we're at 99.9% of all revenues collected. And so again, this goes back to the same trend we saw last year, that additional collection of property tax revenues is making up for the under collection, especially this year in parking and permit fees. You'll see those numbers year over year, the difference between that collection rate. We were at a little over $500,000 this period last year in parking fees, and this year we're just under 200,000. And this is something that we've discussed, but then you'll see also conveyance fees. Last period this year, we were at 866,000. Year to date in conveyance fees, we're at 2.1 million. And therefore those are making up for the shortfalls in parking. And so, I mean, combined with all the other revenue trends, I don't anticipate any major issues on the revenue side. as we
Linda,
discussed before.
Do
Yes.
you have a projection? This is actual through April, so we still have May and June revenues, right?
No, I didn't do a total projection. I just did, I didn't do a projection by line item. I did do a projection of where we would end in terms of the fund balance drawdown.
Okay,
Which would be,
okay.
I'll show you a chart that when we
Okay.
get to it.
That's fine. That works.
And then the second page is just a total on the expenditure side. Again, we're trending where we would anticipate to be. This period last year, we were at 81.1% year to date expenses as a percent of what the eventual budget actual ended up being. Right now, we're at 78% of the approved budget for the year. And so I don't anticipate any major fluctuations in the expenditure trends either. And so that's where we are on the expenditures. The next series of charts are line item details. I don't intend to go over those, but if you could scroll, I will get to the sheet that you scroll past the charts. I think it's like after 10 or so pages.
Where I'm on page 16, Linda.
Yep, keep going. You'll see some bar graphs, and you just go past those, like 3 pages of those, and then the next page that follows.
Here?
Yep, go 2 more pages. And then 1 more. There we go. So this is what you're referring to, Todd, is where I anticipate us being as far as the fund balance, ending fund balance. So you'll see in the town council approved budget, fiscal year 2021, you'll see that midway there's that $4.5 million fund balance drawdown that was budgeted initially. And then when we did the revised budget in fiscal year 21, we did that additional special appropriation for the Board of Ed, which brought that budgeted fund balance drawdown to a little over 6 million. I highlighted in yellow that projection that I'm making for the actual fund balance drawdown. I don't anticipate that we will draw down $6 million. The fund balance drawdown would be more like $1.5 million at this point. And therefore the ending fund balance, total fund balance that we're projecting for this year is about $33.3 million. And therefore, when we did the approved budget at the time, when we had the $5.6 million assumption, I included that with the projected fund balance drawdown. So with the 5.6 million that you see in the fiscal year 21-22 approved, you'll see that in bold, the total fund balance would be 27.7 million. Now that again, it includes the projection for this year, but it does include just the budget amount for that following year. And as we just saw in this year, we don't spend everything that's budgeted, and we tend to over collect on the revenue. So even with that 5.6 million drawdown, that will bring us to 27.7. That is assuming a budget as approved. And we know that that's not really the case. So I do anticipate that ending balance, once we approve the budget, if we move forward with the 5.6 million, we will end up with an ending fund balance closer to 28.5 or 29 million by the end of the year.
That's the question. All righty.
Yeah.
So did everybody follow that? Maybe I'll restate it to make sure I got it.
Sure.
And then George, you can check my math here. So right now, the current projection for the end of the year, end of June, is a fund balance of $33.3 million. That's taking in all the assumptions you've made around what you think we'll use, and it includes the additional special appropriation. So obviously that's more money in our fund balance than we had budgeted for. Then using the assumption that we talked about when we did the original budget of we would draw down 5.6 million, which I think is on the next piece of analysis here, to drive to a certain mill rate just to close the equation. That would say if we used all that 5.6, our fund balance at the end of next year, a year from now, would be about 27.79 million. However, we believe even if our spending doesn't come in much under, we will likely have a little bit more left over from the way we budget our revenues. So we would be closer to 29 million, a fund balance of about, call it 29 million. Did I get that about right? If we draw
Yes.
down the 5.6, which we have.
If we go down to 5.6.
Okay.
And as you know, when we budgeted moving forward, we were conservative and we have not included in here any of the federal funds that could potentially be coming as
Correct.
well to
Correct.
offset some of the lost revenues and so forth.
Okay.
Hey, just to clarify for me, the special appropriation, is that the special appropriation related to the Board of Ed, truing up in terms of the healthcare expenses? Is that the one we're talking about? We're not talking about special appropriation we did way back when for the school's operations.
Correct.
Okay, so that's what we went over the last meeting where we got a resolution on how to make sure that was funded. Just want to make sure.
Right.
And so that 1.8 is included in 1.8, 1.9, what we expect to draw down, right?
Yes.
Right.
For next year.
Because we had
Okay,
always.
thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
We had always intended to include that.
Correct.
So Amy's right. I mean, that's in the 5.6 mil. So Linda, what's our estimate if we do get the federal COVID expense refunds? How much do we have?
The current range, yeah. What's the current estimate?
Yeah, the current range right now, there's three pots of money. There's a pot of money that's identified that goes directly to towns based on what the state's share is. For the town of New Canaan, that comes to about $2 million directly to the town of New Canaan. And that can be used to offset revenue losses and other COVID expenses. It is over a 2-year period. So it's over 24 months. So it's not all, but it comes to the town regardless. So that's the first pot. The second pot is there is a pot that goes to counties. And because in Connecticut, we don't have county governments, the amount allocated for Fairfield County is about 182 million or so. The state has told us that they will distribute that to the towns on a per capita basis. Now, in the past, they've done an adjusted per capita based on relative wealth, but just the numbers that we receive from the state right now, we would estimate maybe 2.5 to 3 million for New Canaan from that share, in addition to the town share. And then there's also a separate pot of money that goes to Board of Eds directly. And right now, the estimate for the New Canaan Board of Ed is about $1 million. I think it's 900,000 or a little over $1 million, but in that range. So all in all, combined, all of those pots, you're looking at somewhere between let me do the math, $5.5 million or so to New Canaan. And that's not part of this calculation because we still don't know how they're going to share it.
Linda, on the second pot that's assigned by the county, is that also over 2 years?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I think, George, the
Yeah,
answer to
and
your question is 2 to 3 million excluding Board of Ed, which is probably the best way to look at it. And we should not count that money before we have it in our hot little hands, by the way.
And there are parameters on how you can spend it. You can't do it to get a tax break and stuff like that. They actually, they're very strict in terms of, putting it to work as opposed to reducing taxes or something like that.
Yeah, but still in all, this is pretty good news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could use it for the library, not borrow money.
Exactly.
Right.
Or other things, yeah.
And one of the big things that was identified in that is improvements to wastewater. And we have significant in this year's capital budget, we do have some projects that are related to sewer and CHP and so forth. And therefore, we could provide some relief in the tax funded capital for those resources if we were to redivert those funds specifically for that.
It's good to know that, but it's really part of next year's budget since we don't have the money and nothing's certain. But it does give, to Neil's point, some comfort around the plan here. So that we'll have still have a very healthy balance, even using the assumption that's put forth here of 5.6 million. Okay. So team, the drill here, you want to move into that now? Linda, did you have anything else you want to cover on an update, or do you want to go right into the fund balance discussion?
No, we can go into the fund balance discussion. And so Tucker, if you could go 2 pages.
So
Right
everyone, you
there.
remember the budget that we put forth and sent to the town council had an assumption, and it was just a working assumption on this drawdown. You gotta go a little further down, I believe, down. You get the yellow line visible. There you go.
Correct.
That's perfect on my screen, at least.
Yep.
So the assumption was 5.6 million, which, interpreted or calculated a mill rate of 18.12, which would actually be down slightly from the current mill rate of 18.164, which you can see at the top of the mill rate column there. So the question really to this board is, how much from a fund balance? We have a proposal. That's what we use in assumption 5.6. I'd like to ask, maybe everyone will have a point of view on what we'd like to do here, but I'd like George, maybe if you wouldn't mind, you can kick us off with your thoughts.
Yeah, initially, when we were talking about doing the 5.6 million, I thought, wow, that's a big ask. But as Linda has pointed out, we're going to end the year, even with the 5.6 million assumption, we're going to be in a fairly robust general fund kind of posture. So I'm thinking, to be able to, again, for another year, to reduce the mill rate and therefore reduce at least marginally some of the taxes is something we should really do. It indicates that the town is being very disciplined in the way it's approaching its budget dynamic. And it's clearly something that we can afford. And as people have said in the past, it's really the taxpayers' money to begin with anyway.
I think one of the, thanks for that. I think one of the ideas we've had is can we keep the amount collected by taxation relatively flat? And I don't know whether the 18.19 or the 18.12 kind of keeps that number flat, but that would be an unbelievable accomplishment if we can pull that off for the fourth. I think it's the 4th year in a row, more or less flat in terms of the amount raised by taxation, which would be, I think, a stunning, unprecedented accomplishment for the board. Other thoughts and input?
Hey, Todd?
Yeah, Michael?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think this is an incredible accomplishment to keep it relatively flat. And my view is always does not become addicted to the fund balance. But on the other hand, I think we're in a great shape. My only suggestion would be, why don't we just keep it flat? The flat would be 18.164, which would be taking from the fund balance about 5.25 million. So it's a savings of about 350,000. Is like, do we really need to actually reduce our mill rate, or we just keep it flat? I think keeping it flat is great. Even if we want to reduce our mill rate, I don't think 0.024 versus flat. I like saving every penny. So we can only put in 5.25 and keep our mill rate flat. I think that's slightly better than the 5.6 and reducing our mill rate.
Good input. Thanks,
Yeah,
Michael.
I would agree with Michael on that one. And again, we have this track record. We say we're going to contribute a big chunk of money. We know we're going to get, if all things go well, 1.5% collections more than we budget for. So, that the 5.6 is probably what, Linda, closer to really 4 after we account for the 1.5%, which I like doing that. I think it's conservative and it's smart. It's great that we have this fund balance, but we have a lot of big capital projects coming forward. So I'd like to have this to, put against some of these big capital commitments, which is similarly giving the money back to the taxpayers.
Yep.
It's just over a longer period of time, because we won't have to borrow as much, even if rates are low. But I'm echoing Michael's. Let's
Right. That was going to
stay
be
flat.
That was going to be
we know with the capital budget, we have a lot coming up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was
George,
gonna be my counteroffer to Michael to begin with, is that would be great if we keep the mill rate flat, but let's take the 300 some odd thousand savings and let's use it to help fund some taxpayer funded capital projects. So
Okay.
Still wind up taking 5.6 out.
Sure.
but
Yeah.
In a different way.
I like that too. It
Okay.
just, I think if we keep mill rate flat, we can use that $350,000 more effectively.
All right, Linda, we were never going to keep it simple. So far, we've got a mill rate that's not even on your chart, and we're paying for some capital items on cash. So, so what I have as the bid ask here is the 18.164, I believe was the number, to keep the mill rate flat. Other input?
So
anything else?
if you do a drawdown of 5.25 million, that I'd like to keep this roundish numbers.
Yep, yep.
It brings the mill rate to 18.166, which
Okay.
is a 0.01%. I mean, so it's flat if you don't round. If that's close enough, I would recommend you do that.
Okay.
Well, then it's an increase.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
still an increase.
It's-
That's the
it's-
headline.
And it's
No,
an
but-
increase, no, but wait a second, it's an increase all the way around because we did
That's
not
right.
keep the amount raised by taxation flat. In fact, we're up $900,000, $800,000. So we didn't meet that goal. And now, in order to keep the mill rate equal to last year's or lower, we have to take in excess of $5 million. And if we do it this year, what are we going to do next year? Because we can't take $5 million out of the general fund every year.
Well, we don't, as you know.
Oh, we don't.
We
end
don't.
up taking
We
two.
never have. No.
I understand you get some money back because you underfund and overcollect.
Right.
But
Well,
those
I wouldn't
numbers-
say we underfund, we underspend.
we underspend
We
and we
underspend and we overcollect.
overcollect, but those numbers are getting narrower. And that delta is now about $2.5 million.
Yep.
It used to be 4, but it's
Mhm.
come down to about 2.5.
That's right.
So my
That's 'cause
concern
the
with this
spending's
always
down.
is that if we do it this year, what's going to happen to us next year?
Yep.
And people get, at some point, at some point, we run out of some of these tools,
Except I think, Linda, didn't you run it out? It was at the last meeting that we had what we assumed we draw down and what we actually drew down.
Yeah, we
And
always-
it was a
Big
big
difference.
difference
Yeah,
every year.
yeah.
And so, Chris, I
Correct.
understand completely what you're saying, but practically, we have
Yeah.
a pretty good track record
Yeah.
at, that we're saying we're gonna put 5.6 and we know we're not. We know it's gonna be probably 4. And then how
Mhm.
things flush out, we have a little bit of savings here and there and some things. So I understand, because we thought about it last year, remember Michael was talking a lot about, especially with the Board of Ed, we thought we'd have this great big hole, and then we ended up not.
Yeah. What's the message we're trying to send? We can afford to do anything we want.
That's right. That's right. I think, again, trying to keep the amount raised by taxation, I always say relatively flat, which is basically the track record. It's not maybe perfectly flat, but it's down from a couple of years ago, honestly. It may be up year over year, but it's down from 3 or 4 years ago. Or, we could just say mill rate's flat, 18.164. That's basically flat.
That's another 10,000, Todd. If you
Yeah.
really want to say 18.164 is it's 8,000 to be exact. So
Yeah.
you want to round it's 10,000 and we're slightly down.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it, Neil. I mean, broadly, we're trying to keep the amount we're asking our tax, their tax, the tax bill on their house is going to be flat
Yeah,
again.
that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. And the
Yeah,
real
if we
estate.
can afford to do that, that's great. I just worry how we're going to do that subsequent years, but we'll worry
I
about
just
it
did the
next year.
math real quickly on the 20, call it 29 million with a fund balance at the end of next year, which is what Linda's suggesting we'll probably have. That's about an 18% balance. And we know at a minimum, we want 10. So 10 is the minimum. This board is always targeted between 15 and 20. We don't want to be over 20, but we don't want to be under 15 either. Because that allowed us to do some things during a crisis, frankly, that we didn't even sweat about because we had it in the bank. So 18's right smack in the middle of the strike zone, guys.
I would definitely keep it flat. I would not inch it up at all. I mean, I think that's the least we should come in at in a COVID year. I think we can do that. We've had savings and we've underspent. We continue to underspend. So I think that's a good vision, a good message to the community.
So to do that, Linda, it's 5260, it's 10,000 more to officially say we're not even inching it up a dollar or a point
Right.
0.02.
That's rounded. That's round. Come on, Linda, that's rounded enough.
All right, yes,
so-
526. So you're good, Michael. It does put it flat at 18.164.
Right.
All right, other input, Bob Hamel or Victor? Chris?
Yeah, I do have one question. So as we get these funds from the government and as we underspend on what we said we thought we were going to spend in the budget, do those monies go to the general fund and raise that percentage from 18 to 19 to 20? Or do we apply those funds to reduce our the bonds that we go out and issue? Or is it a combination?
So Linda, I think it's two-part question. One is where does the
Right.
money go when it comes? That's one question. And I think the answer is it goes to the general fund. And then
Right.
how it gets spent is up to this board, Victor. We could use it to avoid adding debt. We could pay cash for items instead of borrowing money. We could use it for expenses like that. Obviously, we lost revenue, that helps as an offset to that. But Linda, thoughts?
No, you're absolutely right. We can't necessarily go and pay down the existing bond debt, but like you said,
Right.
Todd, with future debt, we could opt to issue less debt, which would would have the same impact of controlling the amount of debt,
That's right.
and funding more things by cash, because the bond amortization is set until those funds are callable and can be refunded.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's helpful. And my
we
just
keep it
you
for
know,
roads.
my preference is to reduce the amount that we issue, the bonds that we issue, as opposed to growing the general fund to 19 or 20%.
Okay. Okay. You're okay with the flat rate, the Michael Chen 18164 number?
I am. I think that's
Okay.
a good recommendation.
All right.
Todd,
Bob? Yeah.
I mean, I'm always a fan of the taxpayers getting their money back and yes, we'll, every year is a new year, but with the COVID money that's likely to come our way and interest rates as low as they are, it's not a terrible time to be borrowing. So I don't know, net, I'd rather reduce the mill rate, but certainly keeping it flat, we're talking very small difference.
Yeah. Okay.
If I had my druthers, I'd probably take the yellow highlighted line, but
I would too.
I don't have a vote. That's fine.
But the input's important. I mean, you represent the taxpayers, so, okay, no, that's helpful.
I mean, I think the bonding world is there for the getting now. I wouldn't want to bet what it looks like in 18 months.
Mhm.
Who hasn't, Tom Schulte?
Yeah, so Todd, I would just say, look, it's, there's good arguments on both sides of this. You have to strike a balance. Frankly, I think I'm slightly in favor of the inherent discipline of paying for some of these capital items as we go.
Mhm.
I think that's a good differentiator between, the most recent years and hopefully the coming years versus some of the prior years we might compare ourselves to, is that we really do have this discipline. We do get our overall debt burden under control. So all of those things taken into account, I'd be in favor of the flat mill rate and applying
Okay.
the savings against the assumed 5.6 against some of these capital items.
Okay, that seems to be the consensus. Any other input?
Just to follow up on Tom's comment, we know for sure there's going to be a couple of pretty significant bond challenges, right? We have we're going to have the library, and we're at some point going to have to do the police building, and those two are going to be pretty exciting numbers. So to the extent that we could self-fund some of the smaller capital projects, I agree with Tom that I think that's really the way we ought to go.
Linda, good way to look at it. Linda, if let's assume we got $2 million, we would be able to apply that to the police station or to a library expense, wouldn't we? I would think that'd be the perfect use of it, or the expected use.
Right, you could apply, yeah, you could use divert money to that project. You have a bond authorization, but you don't have to bond if you don't need it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, look,
Right.
that's important for everybody to remember, right? We can have a bond authorization, but a resolution, but we don't have to use all that money. But to Bob's point, look, rates are historically still, and Amy's brought this up too, that they're still so low. We shouldn't be afraid of borrowing some money at these low rates, particularly now with our debt under 95 million or wherever it is now. So, okay, all right. Well, unless there's any other input, what I think what I'll do, Linda, is just want to confirm the amount. The money was $5,260,000. Is that the right number?
Yes.
That keeps the mill rate flat at 18.164. So like a motion to approve the drawdown from the fund balance of $5,260,000.
Aye.
Michael. George, you gotta do a second if you're gonna do one. This is the one.
I second.
Michael made the motion, George seconded. All in favor of that resolution, raise their hands, say aye.
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 Opposed? None? So moved. Okay, well, that takes care of 2 items on the agenda. That's the number. And
Todd, I'm sorry, that was just for the drawdown, but we do need to set the mill rate as well.
yeah. So I understand. I think we did the heavy lifting. Okay, so next item is if we could have a motion to approve the mill rate of 18.164.
It's fine.
Motion?
Judy?
Judy with the motion, second.
So moved.
Tom, okay, all in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, team, so moved. That is terrific. I think, Linda, it'd be great to know, and Kevin, for this board, I believe that's for 4 years in a row, more or less, flat tax revenues for the taxpayers. And I have to applaud this board because we underspend, and it's because of the policies that not only we do, but the town council, the selectman's office, everyone, Tiger, everyone works to keep the spending in check. And so it's really been an incredible few years to be able to pull this off and fund our schools and fund all the other requests that we get. So, okay, let's move on. Thank you. To the Playhouse Theater roof.
All right, thank you very much for having me. Bill was unable to attend, so I'll walk you through this. Normally, we never like to come back for a special appropriation, but in this case, we had some additional work that was necessary to bring the roof project for the Playhouse forward. We needed to hire a roof consultant. That's standard operating procedure for us. And then we wound up doing some pre-environmental services work to try to see exactly what we'd be dealing with, some roof probes. And then we were asked to look at whether or not the structure itself could handle solar. And the thought that once we put on a new roof, we'd like to put solar panels on it and then either feed the Playhouse itself or feed the town hall annex. So, excuse me, all in, that drove up the cost of the project itself. And then the bid came in slightly higher, and we added one of the alternates that we had for the project, which was to put on new roof railing and snow guards on the front. They're actually decorative looking as well, but they serve a purpose. And then we added a contingency for a total of $292,720. We had $231,020 in the budget itself, so we were looking at the delta of $61,700. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but I think you have a memo from Bill kind of spelling out exactly what the expenses were.
And the source of funds for this is we have funds in the movie theater balance. So it won't be tax dollars. There was $848,000 at the end of the fiscal year. And so we will be using those funds for this special appropriation.
Thanks, Linda.
So is this a request, is this a transfer request, or is this a request for a special appropriation? I guess that just say it from the source of the movie theater. fund.
This will be a special appropriation.
Okay. All right. Okay, questions from the board? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Is there anything about this roof that precludes it being, the building being used for a use other than a movie theater?
No.
Okay.
I've just, and I brought this up before, and just in terms of the whole game plan for the renovation of this building. And this just goes back to the fact that we have a lot of buildings in town in terms of just, this study of that this is absolutely, we know a movie theater makes sense. We know it financially makes sense. We know what it's going to cost the tax dollars to keep it, what the demand might be. And it's not like I'm against it. I just don't feel like I have any data that is supporting that it makes sense for us to keep the movie theater. And I know we have a lot of vacancies downtown. I know that's a struggle. You don't want to have other vacant places, but the whole movie watching experience has changed dramatically from when we initially bought the movie theater. And like people at home now have screens that are enormous. You can stream new stuff. I don't know what's going to happen post-COVID, et cetera. So just in terms of, I don't feel like I have a good understanding that we definitely as a town should be supporting and having a movie theater. It's not like I'm against it. I just don't feel like I have the facts. And it's my understanding that the money that we have, it's not really found money. It's like the money that came from the movie theater all these years when we were paying a lot of the expenses of the general fund to keep it going. So that's my struggle. I just don't feel like I have a lot of facts to, or how the decision was made that this is definitely what we're going to do. And I mean, I don't know who's going to go to movies. I do know when we looked at the movie theater years ago, when we did kind of the building study, the utilization was very low at that point, and that was before the continued evolution of how media is delivered. So I just asked that.
I echo Amy's point of view, and I think we have an example of something like this. But there's been a lot of talk, opposition talk towards the library, saying, well, what's the future of libraries and so on. The library has spent an enormous amount of time and effort to document the future of libraries, to show how they've evolved, to show how they become third spaces in communities and so on. So when those questions come up, we can rely on them and say, well, yes, there is this question, but look at all this body of research that suggests that there is in fact a future. So, but we don't have that with the movie theater. We don't know what the current thinking might be of people who really study this kind of thing. Well, we happen to own a movie theater, but that's it, So does anybody know? I mean, it's a good question, Amy. I kind of
let me ask Tiger. Let me ask Tiger a question. Regardless of whether it's a movie theater or not, I thought when looked at this roof, we need to do something for the roof. Whether we sell the building, whether it becomes a boutique hotel, whether it's a movie theater, or whether it's something else. I thought the roof needed to be done. Yeah. So I don't think this is a decision on that. We have a building and it needs a roof. I think that's the issue, not so much what's the future of movie theaters in towns. That's a different question. It's got to be resolved, and it's going to be something we'll have to have a disposition about. I don't know, Kevin, if you've got some thoughts in terms of either people that are talking to us around operating a movie theater or not, I think that would be important. I would just say, if we need a roof, we need a roof. We can't have it degrade to the point where we have a bigger problem. I think that's what I remember, Tiger, from our conversation. So
it needs a roof. Sorry, Kevin.
I would just make a few comments. One, Bowtie did not close for economic reasons. They they're keeping, they're reopening their other theaters, but they were not losing money in operations. So in terms of whether people were going to the movies. Secondly, we've talked to, other towns who've lost their theaters, Wilton now and Darien and Westport. They think they are a vital part of your downtown economy, supporting your restaurants and stuff. So I think there's a strong point of view that that's the case. We've been talking to operators, and operators are very interested. Some people say you've got a gold mine there. Don't give it up. So I think unless there's and Amy, you made the point that we've been supported with the general fund. That's not really true. It's been supported by the revenues from the rentals, and the only thing we've been paying is the debt that we bought it with in the first place. So once that debt is paid off, we have not been supporting with the general fund.
But the maintenance, we had to maintain the building, right?
That net of the revenues.
But I think I do remember looking in this. I gotta brush up on it, but I do remember that the arrangement we had with Bowtie was very favorable to them, and we never ended up getting any excess revenues from it as we had anticipated, because the number of people who used it was never. It got to a threshold where we had money, and it's not that I'm against it. I just think we need to look at it more analytically. And I agree, if the building needs a roof, it needs a roof. That's assuming we keep the building, and I'm not saying we sell, but that someone wouldn't buy it and then not want that roof and do something else. And that's the only reason I bring this up, because I think in terms of going forward and saying, if we do a movie theater, this is how it's the costs to the town. This is what the revenues might be. I just think we need more data on that, certainly for the interior. And in terms of the roof, the assumption, I guess, is that we keep the building as it is with a roof, and even if we got another tenant, they would work with the general space is what we're going with. They wouldn't want to reconfigure something or make it higher or something like that.
Kevin, isn't there a committee you formed?
We've been working with identifying an operator, and there's strong interest in operating it as a theater.
Yeah.
So if we felt we did not want a movie theater, that would be a different discussion, and looking at just simply marketing the building to the highest bidder.
Yeah, I'm going to try to emphasize more communication through whatever committee you formed and the Board of Finance, because I don't think we've seen actually a presentation on that.
Well, we haven't really. We've been in negotiations since January with multiple parties, and
so who is we? Is it your office, Kevin?
Tucker, Bill, myself, yeah, Tucker.
And I can just add that when there was talk that the theater was going to, be put out there and as a possible opportunity, I had so many calls and emails from residents who said, how can we help? We want to see a theater in town. That seemed to be the sentiment from most of the people that I talked to. We had people who said they'd like to get involved. So I think our theater is very different than many of the ones in the other towns that have closed. They were just more of a building, just any old building. This is the New Canaan Playhouse, and it does need a roof. Having been a tenant in there for 12 years, I can tell you it needs a roof.
Yeah. I think that's the message. And by the way, we've got the money sitting in a bank account, earning no interest, so it's not as if it's going to cost us anything.
Neil's point, I think we probably should, when we have more information, get back and report to you all. Just haven't been able to do that as of yet.
Yeah, that's the second.
Yeah, that's fine.
New roof and then that.
So the hard cost on this roof is 219, is that it?
It's 219 is the hard cost, plus the 19 for the snow guards, so 238.
Hard cost, okay.
Right, and then we're adding a $23,000 contingency.
Yeah, and then the soft cost, yeah, I get it, okay,
correct.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Are there questions, Judy? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add, when we bought this Playhouse 15 years ago, we had really robust outpouring of support in the community for having and keeping a theater. Now, maybe in fairness to your comments, it's time to do that again. Maybe we need a conversation in the community and maybe a public hearing. But I think there's an opportunity here with the other theaters that have closed. And maybe this is not going anywhere over years. That's a possibility, but it's still the center of town. It's what draws people. It's obviously a landmark structure. If we don't do this, we'll do something else really important with it. So yes, I would support a roof, but it is time to have that conversation. But I think there's an opportunity, and I think that's what the community would say if you pulled them all together. Just tons of people came out, and I know it's 15 years later, but it's still of momentum, I think.
I will say, people often say, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love downtown, I love that, but they don't necessarily use it. So but if people want to pay, but if people are okay with that and paying for it, if it costs, that's fine too. But people always say, gotta have this, gotta have this, gotta have this, but don't necessarily want to pay for it or patronize it. So I'm fine with fixing the roof. I personally, to do anything that is improvements to the building that is solely for movie purposes, I personally would need to have a greater understanding of what that means.
So it sounds like the feedback is, I think, I won't speak for everybody, we'll take a vote, but we have to fix the roof. I mean, the roof needs it. Tiger supports that. I think that's just something, that's a responsibility that we have for one of our buildings. However, we also need to hear the plan as to what really we're going to do going forward. So before we not only invest more money, but we'd like to hear about that. I think the people in town would like to hear about that. So I'm sure everyone has an opinion, but it would be nice to hear what that plan is. So if that's the general consensus, if there are no other comments, let's take a vote on the motion to fix the roof, and which leaves us all the options we want. We can have a theater, we can sell it, we can do anything, but I think we want to have a roof before the building starts to become a bigger problem. Okay, so motion then as proposed.
So moved.
Judy, second. Neil? Second, Neil. All in favor of the roof project?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so moved.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for all your comments. Good and great feedback. I think that's really to you, Kevin, on the disposition of how we can move forward with it. And if so, then what would that mean? But let's divorce that a little bit from fixing the roof. Okay. All right, let's see. Neil, have you got an update on the retirement plans? We have Neil. Neil, you're on mute.
Yes, I have a comment and a special surprise because I think George, of course, is in our group. And I thought, how appropriate as a gift, letting him have the dais to talk about the meeting we had. What do you think, Tom?
Way to go, George. I second that motion, Neil.
This just means you guys weren't paying attention, that's all.
Oh, what a
I was
pain.
gonna ask
yeah.
George, were they even at the meeting? But maybe it sounds like they were.
Oh, he was there. Go ahead, George.
So we did. We had our twice a year meeting with the guys who run the 451 and 407, I think, or which are the voluntary contributions for some people, contractual contributions for certain unions, and optional contributions for some people who had worked for the town but have now left employment with the town, but have left their pension investments with the advisors that they had when they were working for the town. Bottom line is, and we've had this conversation with them in the past, I think there's way too many funds that are offered. There's about 60 plus funds. The average investment size in of these accounts is about $70,000. So they're doing a good job. They make sure that there isn't basically mission creep in terms of they have a fairly robust process to ensure that if it's a large cap AAA fund intent, they check that on a fairly regular basis. And if they see that fund starting to drift away so that it doesn't match what its prospectus says, if the investments contained in the SEC filings don't match what the prospectus says they should do, Then they put them on a watch list. They give them basically 6 quarters to get themselves back in line with what their prospectus says they're investing in. And that's very important because that's the basis on which the people who participate in these funds make the decisions as to which funds they want to invest in. So having fund integrity and not have fund creep, which happens a lot with fund managers because they fall in love with positions, is a really healthy and important safeguard for the people who trust these guys to make the recommendations. So I think the bottom line takeaway is they did a good job. They're still doing a good job. We still think they offer too many funds, but that's not too terrible. And what we would really like to do is to see, is there a way to get some of the Board of Ed employees who don't participate in these funds necessarily, to see if there's a way for the town to extend to those employees an opportunity to do so. I think that's pretty much everything we did, wasn't it, Neil?
Yeah, I think that that was a good summary. And we're going to have an retirement investment day sometime in the year. So we look at all of our retirement funds, but this was for security benefit.
Okay.
I think Neil said
Hey,
that you wanted them to come back and present to the full board at some point.
Yeah, I think at some point, over 2 years, you guys should see what the alternatives are and choices. And so it's going to be a lot of detail, one of those presentations, but we should do it at least every 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the average expense ratio people are paying on these varieties of funds? Because you go to Vanguard and get like 6 basis points or something. I mean, because that compounding expense of that hurts, So
Right.
the funds they're offering.
Yeah, it depends on which offering they invest in. I mean, they do offer a large number of the Vanguard funds, which, as most of you know, I'm a big fan of. And they have some of the some PIMCO funds and some more management directed funds, which obviously have higher expense ratios. So it's hard to ask them to say, okay, give me a single number, because even if you got that single number, it really wouldn't mean very much in terms of the fact that there's so many other investment options for people to elect.
Yeah, we would say, the universe of participants are very young people and some folks very older and retired. So their priorities differ somewhat, but there is a concentration of money in the so-called target date plans, which is not unusual, very similar to what you see in sort of the private 401k or risk-based plans.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Any other updates that we need to know for now? Did you pick a time to have them come in? Is it in the summer or in the fall?
It would be the fall.
In the fall, okay, all right. Okay. Unless there are any other questions, we can move on. All right, thanks, everybody. Okay, Tiger, back to you on the sewer fee change.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen just so you can see the proposed fees for this coming year. Excuse me. Just like to say
just remind everybody, we're not voting on anything tonight. This is really an update for us and a discussion.
I just want to say thank you to Bob Mantelli. You did a fantastic job throughout the year putting this together and then managing the payments and the delinquencies. We wouldn't have been able to do without him, so I appreciate it. What we're looking at for 22 for the residential side is what we had approved in fiscal 19. So this will be our 3rd year of the 3-year plan. The increases range at quartile 1 of a $25 increase, quartile 2 and 3 at $15, and quartile 4 as we try to bring that back down to closer to what would be the norm or the median. That drops by $100 itself. On the commercial side, we're looking at more of a standardized 2% across the board. And as you can see, I'm sure you can do the math better than me, but the category 1, $15, 2, $25, 3, $50, 4, $70, 5, $100, and then category 6 at $200. And then the office condos rise by about $5. Overall, this will show basically when we get all done, the math at the end, it's showing that we'll have a reserve for uncollectibles And for timing on whether or not a building comes online or a condo comes online, or there's a change in use of about $43,000 as a little bit of a cushion. Last year, we had a $27,000 increase. Now we're looking at a $43,000 increase. And we do have some collectibles from 2 years prior, not many. And then we have some from this year as well. Some repeat offenders, but the majority of people are paying their sewer use fee, and some paying early, but the majority of them are paying on time. I don't know if you have any questions. We'll be posting this. If you're comfortable with these numbers, we'll be posting this in the advertiser twice with a public hearing date of your next meeting, your June meeting, for final approval. And then at that point in time, the bills will go out and start the process all over.
So we'll have a public hearing at the next meeting.
Correct. It's part of the statutes reads that there has to be a public hearing.
Tiger, are all the new buildings, the view, other structures, all part of this analysis?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, some of the view is not yet, because some of the view is still half and half. They haven't had two of the buildings are up, two of the buildings are not. So, or don't have a C of O yet. So half and half on that.
And do you have the Fletcher Apartments? Are they also included here, or are they not COs yet?
Fletcher Apartments, I'm sorry.
The one that, yeah, no, the ones that are downtown on Forest.
Street? Forest and Locust, Silver Heights.
Yeah.
No?
Silver Heights does not have a C of O yet.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, it threw me off there for a moment. They're still working on the construction of that building.
Yeah, okay.
Is there
any do we think that the addition of those buildings, along with the big cart building, is that going to have material impact on us in terms of revenue or not?
No.
No.
There's not that many units in the end. A material impact, no. It'll be nice.
It also includes the Canaan Parish project, which we had 60 units. They knocked 12 down to build the first 60. They'll come online August, September. And then they'll knock the rest of the buildings down, 48 units, and build the other 40.
Is there any way to know how our costs to the consumer stack up against a privatized system? Other towns, have outsourced this.
You're talking the sewer department itself?
Yeah, I'm just curious
Sure.
whether people get a better deal by you running it, or whether,
I would have to say yes, they do. Based upon what we've seen across the board for other locations.
Yeah.
Some of them are completely privatized. Some are split. Some town staff, some privatization staff. Some towns go private and then want to come back.
I'm not surprised that that's the case. I guess the sneaky question then is just the CapEx, because we're on the hook to keep this whole thing up to speed, where if we privatized it, some company would have to worry about that piece of it. So I guess, a bigger philosophical discussion is whether we should be charging more and putting more away in a CapEx deferment account, but I don't want to open that can of worms at 9:30.
No, it's a great question, Bob. Tiger, you can give the board, I don't know if you have the numbers handy, but if not, maybe when we meet in June, we have built in our building a sinking fund. I think it's up to, you tell me, Tiger, $3 million or some amount of money for literally that point, Bob.
Right. We have a major maintenance reserve fund whereby 85% of the septic fees that are received go into that. And then our nitrogen credits also go in to that fund every year. And then we've been funding our maintenance reserves out of it. Last year was an $800,000 drawdown. This year, I think, is less than that. I want to say 6, but I'm uncertain. And then we still have a very healthy reserve in that regard that grows each year.
Yeah, I think we're planning on a major capital expense I don't know, we keep deferring it because it's run so well, right? But it's maybe 8 or 9 or 10 years from now, but we'll have a major, I think a large amount of the money that we would need for that put away in that fund, Bob, to avoid just that what you're asking. So there's been some good management on that.
Right, we also had good news on our permit side whereby the zinc and phosphorus requirements that we had, we've been meeting our permit requirements, so that major plan upgrade required that we had looming out for that is now have been written out of the permit since we've been able to show that we can make permit. So our next 5 years, we should be fine with the DEP
really
as well.
That's very good news. Okay, other questions for Tiger Lake? We'll have a public hearing on this and a vote next meeting.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Any other questions? No. Okay. All right, last item on the agenda. So this is what I'd like to do. We need to approve each one of these items A through K in your agenda, starting with information technology and then ambulance, police department, and so forth, A through K. Here's how I'd like to do it. I'd like, Linda and Tiger, I'd like Judy to read what the actual authorization is, the resolution for the item. And then if you could just take a minute on making sure we understand what it's for, we'll have discussion and we'll move on. We're going to go through each one at a time. We'll read the resolution, we'll have your input, we'll have questions, and then we'll just take one vote on all of them. And the vote will be as discussed, as proposed, or as edited. We may choose to, do something different. We may choose to use we've got some money that we could use instead of bonding for this. The other point I want to make, Linda, just to be clear, this is an authorization. We're not actually, help me with the process on actually spending the money. So using the IT technology for $135,000, and maybe in that case, we're authorizing the appropriation, but we haven't approved a bond. I don't think we have a bond approval. Is that correct out of this process?
No, so what you're doing today, you're doing two things. One is, and then after your action, it gets published, and then it goes to town council who makes the final. So you're making a recommendation to the town council.
Yep.
And so the recommendation you're making to the town council is, one is the appropriation, which is approving the project, approving the project. And then two is the bond authorization, giving us permission to issue bonds should we need them.
That's right.
So it's that two-step process.
Okay. So let's give it a try.
And just to, I put together, and Tucker has it on the screen, just a summary of the projects. I know the projects are written in paragraph form, but this perhaps would help you just to kind of see what projects are included within each resolutions, sorted by the resolution themselves.
Well, you know what? An alternative is just we can vote on each one. Why don't we do that? I think that might be easier because many of them are yes and no and easy, and others might require more discussion, and it's going to be confusing to the ones that are easy. So let's amend that. Let's amend that approach. We'll take them one at a time. We'll do the votes A through K. I think that's going to be the more efficient way at the end. Okay. So if you could read the first resolution, Judy, and then let's have some discussion. Take a vote.
All right, information technology, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled Resolution authorizing an appropriation of $135,000 for the Information Technology 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $135,000.
Okay. Linda, anything you want to add to that? I think this one was pretty straightforward from our prior budget conversations. Does anyone on the board have any questions about this resolution?
Because I'm sharing a screen, people are just gonna have to speak up because we can't see it.
We can't see hands, sorry. Yeah, that's right.
All right,
Anyone, any questions on this one?
no questions, all right.
Okay, if not, then I'd like a motion to approve the resolution for information technology, please.
So moved.
Chris, second.
Moved.
That was Tom. Tom,
Yep.
yep. Okay, all in favor, please, aye, or raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, so moved. Tom, okay, on to the ambulance.
Ambulance, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $65,000 for the Ambulance 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $65,000.
Okay. Any questions on this one?
So moved.
Amy, second? Like it?
Second.
Who was that?
Chen,
Michael?
Yep.
Second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
None? So moved. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
All right, Police Department, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $226,000 for the Police Department 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $226,000.
I move approval.
George,
Second.
Amy, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? And I want to remind everybody, we're recommending this to go to the town council. We also may decide to use the money that we just didn't spend on our on our drawdown for these types of items, just as a reminder. This doesn't mean we're necessarily going to issue bonds for that, but at least we have the option to do so. Okay. On
No,
to the
Todd, another thought I had, and it doesn't look like there's restrictions coming from the stimulus money, but if there was, and it was an emergency funding item or something to do with emergency, we've got the police department, we've got the ambulance, we've got the building.
Yeah,
I mean,
perfect.
we've got enough things to cover all of that money coming in. That's just another possibility, but it may not happen.
Another way to look at it for sure. That's right.
Anyway, all right. Town buildings, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $1,300,400 for the DPW Town Buildings 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $1,300,400.
Any questions?
And this one, I just make one clarification. The first item, the CHP project, now it's listed as town buildings with a capital T. During our presentations, we had stated that we were looking at using this at possibly at the high school. It was originally slated at Saks. We thought we'd bring it forward to the high school. Now we're taking a step a little bit further back and going to look at other town buildings, namely like Lapham Center and possibly the town hall, to utilize the monies. And we're analyzing those at present, and then we'll see which one gives us a better bang at that point in time, and then proceed forward. I just don't want you to think that, you know, it was slated for any one building. At present, we're looking at other possibilities.
Okay.
Brought this up at the Selectmen's Advisory Committee Monday, and I just wanted to, you know.
Okay, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Hey, Tiger, could you just remind me what I know this was, I just can't remember that the town hall, the money for the town hall is for the 100,000?
Oh, we designed engineering of the glass doors in the front. We're having an inordinate problem with the closures are burning out steadily now, and the doors are starting to fall incorrectly, and they're banging into each other. So it's a redo of
Okay,
that.
I just couldn't
entire
remember.
facade.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we need a motion. Hang on, we got to vote. So motion to approve D, town buildings.
I'll move.
Judy, okay, second, Amy. All in favor? Aye, opposed? Speak up, please. None? Okay, so moved. Thanks.
Thank
Over
you.
to E.
All right, administration and engineering, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $4,938,065 for DPW Administration and Engineering 2021 project and the financing of said appropriations by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in amount not to exceed $2,900,000.
Yeah.
Questions?
Well, I'm confused. I mean, do I not understand something? It says authorizing an appropriation of 4,938,000, and then we say.
Came out, yeah. I caught that.
We have two grants. One, we have a state funds of 438,065. That's a LoCIP grant and a TAR grant, Town Aid Road Grant from the state that offsets our paving management fund.
Mhm.
And then the Bonus Ridge Bridge is an 80-20 bridge split with the federal government, administered through the state. So the $2 million is actually 400,000 for the town, 1.6 million to the feds administered through the state. So the projects have to be in their entirety, but the allotment is less.
Okay, thanks. I remember now.
So we have to approve the entire project, Tiger, right?
Linda, did I get that right?
Yes, you got it right.
All right, thank you.
So it's the project that we're approving, but the bonds can't exceed the 2.9. I think that's the way you're saying it. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Okay, good clarification. Okay, so we need a motion.
Moved.
Tom, second. Chris, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? So
Thank
moved.
you.
Yep. Thanks, Tiger. Highway?
All right, highway, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled, Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $560,000 for the DPW Highways 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $560,000.
Okay, any questions? None? Motion?
So moved.
Chris, second?
Second.
Second, George, thank you. All in favor? Aye, opposed? None? Okay, so moved.
All right, Parks, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled, Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $891,000 for the DPW Parks 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $891,000.
Okay, any questions? These are all the things we talked about during the budget. Okay, motion? Need a motion? Judy, second? Michael
Second.
Chen? Oh, who's that, Chris? Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. Who seconded?
Michael.
Michael, great. Okay, thanks. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so moved.
Thank you.
All right, police station, approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled, Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $7,500,000 for the police station 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $7,500,000.
So moved.
Amy, so moved. Oh, go ahead. Amy, before you moved it, Chris was trying to chime in for a question. So Chris, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I'll wait till it's been on the floor, then I want to discuss it.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second. I have a second. Then what we'll do is we'll have discussion, then we'll vote.
So you need a second just so we can discuss. So
Michael Chen seconded it.
Oh, Michael did. Okay, so Amy moved it, Michael seconded. Okay, so discussion?
Yeah, so my question is, do we actually have a project?
Sorry.
I mean, this is a little bit like the library, right? And we're making a library come to us with stacks of paper to show us their project. What do we have that is analogous with the police department?
Well, I think, George, we have the building department, or the building committees at the police department. And right now there's two sets of architects looking at two parallel approaches to either the facility at the current location, and then whether there are alternative options where it might be. And I think the sense is that within the next number of months, we'll be able to put something forward as a substantial project with the bells and whistles and all the details. This is just, I think, to put on the docket part of the funding that we anticipate is going to be needed for this large project. And I think the idea is next year we would also authorize another substantial amount of money for bonding of it, which doesn't mean we would bond it. If we have a lot of resource, we could do it another way, but there is a building committee, and it's certainly not as far along as the library in terms of what they brought forward. But
yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with voting an appropriation at this point with a project that's not fully baked.
What's the pressure on timing, if any?
Yeah,
We're not going to be issuing bonds. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, this is a fair point. Well, I think we have $500,000 in the budget already, which is can be used for engineering for this project through Tiger. We haven't used much of that money at all yet, have we?
No.
So, I mean, there will be no reason why we couldn't put this off till June or July if, or even August.
Okay, well, can we use the same process, frankly? Can we use the same process around P&Z if we need it? Have whatever we need from a budget point of view and some more details, just like we did with the library. I think it's a process that works, frankly.
That works.
So if that's not an issue, then I think what we'll just do is we have a motion. So unfortunately, I'd like to see. Well, we're supposed to vote on it. Then we can make a second motion. The second motion.
Can we table it?
Well, I'd like to table it.
Defer it,
June.
yeah.
Yep, that's fine. We can defer
That's
it.
fine.
Okay.
Just make a motion to defer.
They can
it.
withdraw their motion. They can
Yep.
just withdraw their
All
motion.
right.
All right, Amy and George.
I'll withdraw. You want me to
Okay.
withdraw?
Let's
Yeah.
do that. Table
easier?
item.
Okay.
Thank you. George, you okay with that?
I withdraw as well, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we'll defer that to a June or a July conversation. Very good. Okay, next item I on the schools.
The schools approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $1,365,734 for the school's 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in amount not to exceed $1,365,734.
Okay, motion to approve these projects.
I'll move.
Okay, Amy, second. Chris, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
None? Okay, so moved.
Emergency management. Approval and recommendation to the town council of the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $197,011 for the Emergency Management 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in an amount not to exceed $197,011.
Okay, any questions? Okay, motion to approve.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, thanks. Second,
Second.
Tom Schulte, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so moved.
Right. New Canaan High School roof. Approval and recommendation to town council of the resolution entitled Resolution Authorizing an Appropriation of $4 million for the school's 2021 project and the financing of said appropriation by the issuance of general obligation bonds of the town and notes in anticipation of such bonds in amount not to exceed $4 million.
Questions? I have a question. What was the original price for this project? This came down, I think, considerably, right?
Yeah.
Linda, do you remember? Was it 6 million? What was it?
No, the original project had it at 3.5, total 7 million, split in over 2 years. And then when they went out for bid, the numbers came drastically down. And then based on the timing and some of the other projects, they felt like they didn't need to do it over 2 years. They could do it over one, and just to take advantage of the work. So it came down in price and also in how long it would take them to
Okay.
get done.
So it will be done in one shot for 4 million?
Yes.
For this summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's planned for this summer.
Okay. Okay.
And I believe they already have bids for this already.
Okay, so should we be approving the actual amount as opposed to like a placeholder of 4 million?
No,
I
I
think
think,
they want
Well,
this
there's
to get
usually-
going. I think they wanted this to get, if I understood, they needed this to help with their timing for this summer.
Right. And there's a
You're right,
contingency
Todd.
built in, and we only bond what the actual spend is, and because
Right.
we bond after the project is done, so
Right.
we won't bond 4 million, we will bond what they actually end up spending.
but even the 4 million number, as Todd said, Linda, that's, I think that's like 3 million less than the original ask.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great.
Good, good, good.
That's great.
Okay, any other questions? All right, motion to approve. Judy, second. George, okay, all in favor of the new high school roof?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none? So moved. All right, thank you, everyone. And we, just the one deferral on the police station, I think that's good. Great work, okay?
Yep. So Linda, check me on this, but I've been sort of like keeping a running total. So we're looking at about 13,700,000, something like that.
Right, because we took out
'Cause we took the 7 million
the,
out for the,
7.5.
Linda, I hate to torch you on this. What are we going to pay down in the budget next year? I don't have that handy. Roughly.
It's
I
around
believe it's-
13 million, right?
It's about that number.
So-
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, good.
that's
Okay.
good.
perfect.
Okay. All right. We have any other items? Is that the last item?
No, we have review of line item, review and approval of line item transfers.
Okay. Linda, you want to walk through those?
They're all in your.
I believe they're on your tablet. It's just miscellaneous line item transfers between departments. Let me see if you have those.
Well, it's an approval, so I'd like to have it on the screen if we could.
Sure, or we could bring them next month, because my computer's not, my screen is not giving me the ability to share.
All right.
So we could
Let's-
bring those for you next month.
I'd rather not approve it if it's not on the screen.
Sure.
We'll look at the same thing. Okay, so let's
No
defer
problem.
that as well. Okay, if it's not urgent. Okay, any other items? Any other business?
Well done, team.
Before we have a motion, George, any final thoughts? You know,
Sure.
Just, I'm going to miss you guys. And as I said earlier, for me, it has been a sincere privilege. And especially I'd like to thank Todd for consistent courtesy and patience and collegiality that just shapes all the conversations on the board. And I think that's hard to do. And I think he does it really well. So thank you, sir.
thank you. I appreciate that. I did draw a map of the 3 different ways to get from West Hartford to New Canaan. I don't know if you can see it. So there are myriad ways to get back when we need you. And I also did confirm you can be an advisor on committees.
Okay. That's really good to know.
So you're not out of the hook. Anyway, thank you so much for your service. I can't thank you enough. All right. With that, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So I move we adjourn.
I think, George, that's appropriate. All right. I need a second.
I say,
All right, Tom, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? All right. So moved. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, good luck, George.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks, George.
Bye-bye.